What? Music!
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
We won't be out long.
Take your time. Track's all yours.
You ready?
The name on the middle of that steering wheel should tell you that I was born ready. Hit it.
Attaboy. Let me drive. I won't make a fool out of you.
I got a message for all of them. Shake and bake.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind? That just happened.
These cars, you sit in a box, a coffin, gasoline all around you. It isn't like it being inside a bomb.
It's tough enough being a girl on the track. Living in my dad's shadow doesn't help much.
You have to be kind to the car. You feel the poor thing groaning underneath you.
No race was ever won in the first corner.
I'm gonna give you an engine, low to the ground, extra big oil pan will cut the wind from underneath you. That'll give you 30 to 40 more horsepower.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
Brakes are warm. Tires are warm.
I'll work in the cars and I'll drive and I'll eat and sleep and I'll work in the cars and I'll drive.
Damn fast, and when he runs so close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is.
Besides, the best drivers don't dwell on the future or the past. The best drivers focus only on the present.
They could never have imagined it, those pioneers who invented the automobile, that it would possess us like this in our imaginations, our dreams.
I'm gonna give you a fuel line that will hold an extra gallon of gas. I'm gonna shave half an inch off you and shape you like a bullet.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
Racing is in my blood.
I was put on this earth to race cars.
I accept every time I get in my car. There's 20% chance I could die, and I can live with it, but not 1% more.
No, Nicky, don't bring the percentages into this. Don't be a pro. The minute you do that, you kill what's good about this. You kill the sport.
And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up?
You want me to work the pit and you drive? Fine, we'll try that.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive.
If any of us imagined, really imagined, what it would be like to go into a tree at 150 miles an hour, we would probably never get into the cars at all. None of us.
Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
I am just as good as anybody out there on that track, and I don't need anybody to win my races for me.
I wish my daddy were alive to see this, to feel this.
And when we get you primed, painted, and weighed, you'll be ready to go out on that racetrack. You hear me? You're gonna be perfect.
You don't understand what happens, do you? They make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and one or two of them turn out to be something special. Nobody knows why.
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
So it has always seemed to me that to do something very dangerous requires a certain absence of imagination.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated by the hands of somebody who is truly better than you.
The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
If you ain't first, you're last.
There's 40 other vultures out there who managed to finish the race on their tires. You see Darrell Waltrip using up his tires?
There's nothing I can't do with a race car.
I mean, hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? I mean, come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
On the other hand, I suppose potential problems are in the back of your mind all the time.
So in many ways, I feel responsible for what happened. And
You were, but trust me, watching you win those races while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
You're so lucky. Sit there all closed in by machinery and bolts, precise things. There's hardly any room for you. It must be a nice, safe feeling.
Yeah, you gotta learn to trust something. Might just as well be the seat of your pants.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. And racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
Well, we can drive. We can drive beyond the limits of the tires, the engine, the car, anything else.
Look out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes, every gear change, every corner, perfect. You see it.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
But it isn't just business, is it? What we do, it's passion, love, which is why we're prepared to risk our lives for it.
Racing That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Why does everybody keep telling me what my problem is?
That you get so emotional.
You would never, ever say that to a guy.
If you don't leave your feelings off the track, you're never going to get what you want.
I'm a race driver, and I can win it on my own. Please let me race.
Fine. Then let's race.
And welcome back to the Retro Racing Managers League and the Grand Prix World Championship of 1991. Second race of the season comes from the Interlagos circuit in Brazil, and after the thriller that we had for the US Grand Prix at Cleveland that saw Michael Schumacher and Ferrari take victory and the two McLarens of Gerhard Berger and Alessandro Nannini finish on the podium, we're definitely in for a very exciting battle here in Brazil. Pre-qualifying up first, and once more 14 teams are battling for just 3 places in qualifying for the Grand Prix. Last time, it was Jordan, Coloni and Leighton House that made it through. Who's going to get there this time? Apologies for your slight break in transmission. Aguri Suzuki and Damon Hill on the front row of the grid from Johnny Herbert and Carl Wendlinger. Ukio Katayama and Roberto Moreno in front of Fabrizio Babazza and Andrea De Cesaris at the start of this 50% distance qualifying race. Nicola Larini and Eddie Cheever from Emanuele Pirro and Jo Winkelhock. Then on the 7th row of the grid behind them, it's Alan McNish in the Real and Roland Ratzenberger in the Von Metal. Eric Comas is alongside Roberto Guerrero. On row 9 of the grid, it's JJ Leto and Ricard Rydell. Then Ivan Capelli and Martin Donnelly. Ahead of them, behind them, I should say, Tommy Byrne and Eric Bernard, Paul Tracy, his teammate, and Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi, and then Hideki Noda and Laurent Aiello, the 2 life cars, unfortunately failing to qualify once again for this epic contest here in Brazil. So it's obviously going to be a very interesting and intriguing battle for all of the contenders as they gear up to get ready. Johnny Herbert lining up in 3rd position behind his Dallara teammate Carl Wendlinger in the Jordan there in the mix as well, and we are racing here in Brazil. And a great start from one of the Hondas moving forward, the Leighton House I should say. They are considering a switch to a full works effort next year. Look at Moreno getting a terrific start in the Coloni. So Roberto Moreno up at a 2nd position. A little bit of puffs of smoke into turn 1, but it looks as though everybody's made it through the first corner without incident. So that's really good news. A clean start from everybody as we work our way forward. A fabulous battle still going on as Suzuki runs from Moreno, Herbert, Katayama and De Cesaris. Damon Hill not running at the front as he was in America. It's Suzuki who leads the way currently at the moment, the Japanese driver. Behind the top 6 it's Wendlinger, Larini, then Bob Manson in the 2nd, Jordan Cheever is next up from Winkelhock, Hero and Roland Ratzenberger, the Austrian. Then it's Alan McNish and Ricard Rydell are both in the Reals. It's very close indeed between the field in terms of 1 lap pace. The entirety of the 26 cars that get through to this pre-qualifying phase were separated by 2.2 seconds at time qualifying. That's very little time to find indeed. So that is a really interesting and intriguing situation. Now you can see there the fuel loads for the drivers. Looks like everybody in the top 5 going light. Damon Hill's going to go the full distance without a stop by the look of it. Wendlinger's going to try and go for the move on at Damon Hill at the end of the lap. Now that's big gambling from the Dallara team there, for Damon Hill going heavy. Up on the inside though, Wendlinger's going to get the move into Jordan. Can Damon Hill hang on? No, he can't. He has to let them go. So Ukio Katayama in 3rd position, the 2 Leighton House Hondas, 1st and 3rd position. It's been a very intriguing run in between the American and Brazilian Grand Prix. That's Barbazza getting his move on the inside line. He gets the move on the Reynard. So Barbazza is through into 8th place past Nicola Larini. So a very interesting and intriguing start to proceedings. A very good battle so far. But Aguri Suzuki leads the way from Moreno, Katayama, Herbert and Andrea De Cesaris. Well, so far so good in terms of the on-track battles. No major catastrophes, no major dramas for the time being. So everybody just working their way forward. A very comfortable start in the first couple of laps. Nobody really dropping it. A very comfortable start indeed for Roberto Moreno. But Aguri Suzuki running very well in front of Moreno, Katayama and Herbert, then De Cesaris, Wendlinger and Damon Hill. And then it is Barbazza that runs very solidly in position. So it's going to be a really exciting battle as the field continues on its way through. But obviously, it's been a very dramatic start to proceedings this year because we had a very thrilling race at Cleveland on the Burke Lakefront Airport. We certainly don't have that catastrophe now. So it really is going to be a sensational run for all of the contenders as they run in proceedings now. And still, the battles are well and truly joined here in Brazil. Suzuki, Moreno, Katayama, Herbert, De Cesaris, Wendlinger and Damon Hill. That's the order at the moment. Moreno on home soil, of course, so that definitely helps his motivation as he continues to go through. So a really sensational battle for the contenders. Suzuki out in front. These Leighton House Hondas have definitely made a very solid start to the proceedings this year. But at the moment, we are watching one of the AGS Judds. Oh, that is a retirement already. And that is one of the AGS cars. Looks like they've got a rear wheel deficiency. So a big problem for Hideki Noda. The Japanese driver is already out of this race. So that's very unfortunate indeed for the Duracell AGS team. One car is already down at the end of lap 3. As Akio Katayama goes through and across into lap number 4. It's his teammate Suzuki that leads the way. There were some interesting words between the two drivers after America, apparently. Oh, and up the inside, that's a good move from Chiva as Winkelhock tries to go right around the outside and Chiva locks up. Well, I think there was a little bit of miscommunication between the two drivers there. They both wanted to commit to the corner, but both also wanted to give each other some space. And they very nearly both ran off the road. Chiva's going to try again here at the end of the straight. Lovely job, so Chiva gets through, no problem at all, as Ratzenberger makes the move on Pirro in the same breath. Whoa, Johnny! Very close there from Johnny Herbert. Almost runs completely off the road. He was lucky to keep that car going. So, very interesting situation, as Eric Bernard appears to be slowing. Oh, he's off! He's off! So, a big problem for Modena. So, Eric Bernard spinning off the road, I'm afraid. The Modena Lamborghini going off there. Eric Bernard trying to get the car back onto the way once again. So once again, the contenders still pushing forward. Ukyo Katayama comes through at the end of the lap. 14 teams trying to qualify for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Only 13 of them have actually made it through to this pre-qualifying race. Neither of the drivers for the Life Racing team, neither Bruno Giacomelli nor Cheryl Glass, were able to qualify. They were about 2 seconds slower off the pace than their colleagues at the AGS team, who filled the back row of the grid, so they didn't stand a chance of getting through. So big problems for Life, unfortunately. Moreno has now dropped back to 3rd position behind Katayama as we watch Ivan Capelli. And that's Winkelhock still dueling, by the way. Winkelhock still having a great battle with Chiva. But Capelli, did he make a move? I think he just about managed to get through there past one of the Reynards. That's Emanuele Pirro that he managed to make the overtake on. Meanwhile, Moreno is trying to keep Johnny Herbert at bay. So still they battle on through. Lap 5 here at Interlagos. The second race of the 1991 Grand Prix World Championship. So a really exciting run. Now, Damon Hill is obviously on a very heavy fuel load there, down in 7th position, but he's keeping relatively good pace with the cars in front. And that's going to be quite crucial when it gets to the pit stop phase, because if Damon Hill is going to go all the way to the end of the race without a pit stop, that will obviously give him a little bit of an opportunity later on into the race. There's only one objective in these pre-qualifying 50% distance races. The first 3 teams across the line will go through to the Grand Prix, so it's very important that you are one of those 3 teams. Ivan Capelli still pushing on in the Monteverde with the Viant backing. And And there's a Jordan up the road. That's Barbazza from Larini. Then Winkelhock, Chiva, Ratzenberger, McNish, Capelli. And behind him is Emanuele Pirro in the Reynard. So still some good battles. Up the climb, up to Mugello. And there is Ukyo Katayama. It's a 1-2 for the Leighton House team for the time being. They've looked fairly comfortable all the way through this first part of the season. The Japanese pairing definitely going stronger in the ups and down nature of this Interlagos circuit than they did on the flat of Cleveland. And you can see that there's a few teams that have done a better job so far in the preparation for this race, certainly than they did in America. Roberto Moreno on home soil, that always gives him a helping hand. And Carl Wendlinger diving up the inside of Andrea De Cesare, and he's through. No problems at all there for the Austrian. So the Jordan moves up into P5. That takes them one step closer to qualification, but they're still not qualified yet, because they've got to get past Moreno and Herbert. Herbert, by the way, is trying to get past Moreno. And Johnny Herbert makes the move in the Dallara. Nicely done then from the British star as he works his way up into third position. So if Johnny Herbert can get through, then maybe Carl Wendlinger can get through as well. That's got to be the Austrians' plan. As Suzuki settles into a rhythm. I was going to pick up the story I touched on very briefly earlier on. There was a bit of an argument apparently in the pits after the pre-qualifying race between Suzuki and Katayama. As Katayama was on the go the full distance strategy and held up his teammate. And Aguri Suzuki feels that not only did he cost him the win, he actually hurt the preparation for the Grand Prix itself. So Suzuki and Katayama already appear to be having an interesting little relationship, those two, the Japanese drivers, hoping to push the team further forward. So there is Aguri Suzuki. Across the line, Katayama second, Herbert third. Then it's Moreno, Wendlinger, De Cesaris, Hill, Barbazza, Larini, Winkelhock, Chiva and Ratzenberger. From McNish, Capelli and Emanuele Pirro in the Reynard Renault engine car. So down the back straight. And here comes JJ Leto. Now Leto's trying to get his move on the inside of Pirro. Can the Monteverdi get by? No problem at all for JJ Leto in the end. A nice bit of work there from the Finn. So he gets himself a little further forward. Now Moreno has not let Johnny Herbert get away yet. So they're still having a nice little battle. Here comes Martin Donnelly. Bit of a resurgence from the Fonmatal. Oh, nice move. So Donnelly making progress then in the Fonmatal. They've had some setup difficulties apparently in the first couple of races. They've certainly had a better run in Brazil so far compared to Cleveland, but they're apparently having some deficiencies with the setup of this particular car. But they are hoping to make a little bit more progress as the season progresses. There's Johnny Herbert, still running a very solid race in third, in front of Moreno, Wendlinger, De Cesaris, Hill and Barbazza. The Laras are now both in the top 10, which is definitely much better than Cleveland, because Johnny Herbert had a spin, if you recall, on lap 2, and ended up having a very long race after that point. So Suzuki and Katayama, 1 and 2 for Leighton House. You can see behind Martin Donnelly is now Pirro, so he's lost a couple of places. Roberto Guerrero, as we ride on board with Eddie Chiva, trying to make his dive on the inside line for 10th position past Winkelhock. Winkelhock is defending though, nicely done there from Joe Winkelhock, Smokin' Joe as he's known. Two Zaxby drivers, very much the more controversial end of the grid. Joe Winkelhock is known as being an incredibly heavy smoker, even when nobody's looking down in pit lane. And Tommy Byrne is, well, I'm not entirely sure what the right phrase to put it. He's a colourful character, as many people have pointed out in the Grand Prix paddock here. So Capelli and Leto, the two Monteverdis, have now crept into the top half of the grid, trying to work their way further forward if they can. McNish running in 13th in front of Capelli, but behind Ratzenberger and Chiva. So Winkelhock has held on to his 10th position. If this were the Grand Prix, top 10 would be rosy, because the top 10 is where you score points. 15 for the win, then 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. My apologies, it's actually 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then of course there is the bonus point for pole position and the bonus point for fastest lap. Joe Winkelhock. Only counts for the Grand Prix, I should point out. It doesn't count for the pre-qualifying races as well. You don't score points in pre-qualifying. Here's There's Martini in the Minardi. They've had a very difficult start to the year, the Minardi team. Not really been on point yet. Luigi Martini really struggled in qualifying. Apparently he was held up on 2 of his fastest laps by the life cars. So Martini feels he could have got a lot more out of the car had he not been balked on his fastest of his flying laps. That's the excuse he gave, certainly. Whether that's one to believe or not, we'll have to see. McNish all over the back of Eddie Cheever, and he's made a move, but it's not worked out. So he's now got to bail out of the move. But the Ford Eurobrun in front of him with Jägermeister backing. Very bright and very colourful indeed to see with orange. There's all sorts of rumours flying around with that Ford takeover bid. Somebody let slip to us that there could be a complete rebranding of the team for 1992. Obviously it wasn't that long ago since Aston Martin had a crack at the Sports Car World Championship in Group C. Apparently that particular branding, that particular squad could be making a return in Grand Prix racing. That's what we're hearing on the grapevine. But they have a few brands with Ford, of course, because Ford owns Aston Martin, Lagonda and Jaguar. Up the inside comes the move from Ratzenberger. He's on a charge. And Roland Ratzenberger picks off Larini. And that's Ratzenberger into the top 10. Great comeback from the Von Metal driver. So Roland Ratzenberger really starting to make some headway here. And it looks as though Cheever's going to make the same move. So Larini has lost 2 places in quick succession. Not good news for the Reynard team, but very good news indeed for both Von Metal and Ford Eurobrun. Now McNish is trying to make his move on Larini. He has to bail out of it. I wonder if Larini's one of the cars with a heavy fuel load. But certainly Roland Ratzenberger, who did a better job in qualifying than his teammate Martin Donnelly, and is really starting to charge his way through the pack now, the Austrian. Suzuki, Katayama, and then we have Herbert, Moreno and Wendlinger. So De Cesaris has dropped back to P6. A very solid run so far, but Suzuki leads the way. Leto is currently tucked up behind McNish. Now, hang on, there's been a bit of a shuffle in position there. Moreno is dropping back. Moreno appears to have lost... Oh, Moreno's out! Moreno's out! That's a big disaster for the Coloni. He ran as high as 2nd at the start, but I'm afraid Roberto Moreno, the car is ablaze, and he needs to get out of that quickly, which he does. So I'm afraid Roberto Moreno in the Coloni is out of the race, which is amazing news for Jordan, because they are now set to qualify as they did in Cleveland. Herbert is in 3rd place for Dallara, and Wendlinger is 4th for Jordan, but I'm afraid Roberto Moreno on home soil is out of the race here in Brazil, and that's one of the first major contenders for this particular race. So a very tricky start to proceedings then for the Coloni team. Not going the way that they were hoping for so far. So that's 2 retirements already. Hideki Noda and Roberto Moreno on lap 12 out of the 36 laps we're going to run. Takumi Suzuki and Rikko Katayama having a very solid battle at the moment. Johnny Herbert and Carl Wendlinger still having a good chase of things in front of De Cesaris. And then it's Hill, Winkelhock, Barbatza, Ratzenberger and Cheever. McNish is in 11th place, then Larini, Leto and Capelli. Donnelly is next up. And De Cesaris is actually in pit lane, so Andrea De Cesaris in the Coloni, clearly feeling that the team is a little vulnerable now after the retirement for Roberto Moreno. He decides to pit before everybody else. He's trying to jump the gun. Here comes Leto up the inside as De Cesaris exits the pits. He's about 10 seconds on the entry and using another 20. You'll lose another 20, I should say, taking into consideration the pit lane exit. Ratzenberger dives up the inside and gets Barbatza. This is a brilliant charge from Roland Ratzenberger. The Austrian is putting on quite a brilliant show here. It's a great run from Ratzenberger. He is a proper talent. As Wendlinger now makes the move on Johnny Herbert. Herbert's gone. Herbert's gone off. Now what's happened to Johnny Herbert? So he's come up to the hairpin. Has he made contact with anybody? Oh, he's got a gearbox problem. So Johnny Herbert is out of the race from 3rd position. It looks as though the podium position is cursed today. First Moreno and now Johnny Herbert. So a very disappointing start to the race both times now for Johnny Herbert. He's not had a very competitive start to 1991. His teammate has. But Damon Hill is up to 4th again. He's got a long way to go, of course. And he is not, we already know, going to make a move for the pits. He's going to try and go the full distance. So we're now Suzuki, Katayama and Wendlinger, then Hill, Winkelhock and Ratzenberger. The Austrian is doing a sensational job, running up in the top 6 for Fonmetal. Barbatza, Cheever, McNish, Leto, Larini, Capelli and Donnelly. And it's Guerrero in the second of the Ford Eurobruns. Here comes Donnelly, making his move on the inside, and now he's making moves. So they obviously struggled in qualifying, but in the race trim, the cars are definitely starting to find their feet. A little bit of a hiccup at Cleveland, and now they are getting back into the zone again. Here's Cheever, and he gets past Barbatza. Well, that's very encouraging for Ford, who have, of course, bought into the Eurobrun team for 1991. And apparently this is just a transitional season for them before big things happen, in quotes. So a fabulous situation then for the competitors. There's been some reports about the Ford Eurobrun drivers finding life with this new power unit very unhappy. It's not been the easiest couple of weekends for them. Apparently the Eurobrun drivers have both been complaining about the Ford engine. One of them, and we don't know which one it was because nobody will confirm or deny that it was said at all, but the piece of paper I've been given with the quote, and it was said it was like a Formula 3000 engine, which is obviously a lot more down on power than the Formula 1 counterparts. So here they come, Andrea De Cesaris working further forward, trying to work his way onto the back of his opponent, but obviously De Cesaris has made a pit stop. Ratzenberger and Cheever battling away. Looks like Winkelhock has made a bid for the pits. Oh no, sorry, Winkelhock has overtaken Ratzenberger. And here comes Bernard. Bernard making the bid up the inside, and that is on the inside of the Duracell AGS down at the back of the field. Not the easiest of times then over at Duracell AGS. It's it's not really a brand new team, but they've certainly cobbled the squad together again with a little bit of extra backing. Eric Comas, Frenchman, still having a solid run of it. The battles continue to progress. Up the top comes Eric Comas. The Ferrari team have definitely not been as strong as they would have liked to with their Ferrari engine, with their Cosworth engine. Customer Ford engine units. There's actually been a regulation change announced for the 1992 season, which is that a team or a manufacturer are obviously going to be deemed as the works outfit for a particular engine deal. Any customer engines would have a deficit of 50 brake horsepower and would be slightly less reliable than its counterpart because it would take a 91 engine spec rather than a 92 engine spec. So an interesting dynamic there and an interesting situation. So Suzuki, Katayama, here comes Bernard, making his bid up the inside of Tommy Byrne. Tommy Byrne did a great job in America, wasn't quite so strong in qualifying leading up to this one. It's not really had the same sort of pace, but then when you've got an entire field separated by 2 seconds, you know that some circuits are going to favour some cars better than others. Certainly the Jordan is getting back into contention, but it certainly hasn't been as strong as it was in America. Wendlinger led most of the way last time out. Bernard trying again to get past the Minardi of Eric Comas. Can't get through. A very tricky situation still for the contenders. Katayama, 3 seconds back. Wendlinger is about 7.5 down the road in third place. There he is in the background. You can just about make him out. Got 20 laps left of this pre-qualifying race. It's a fascinating dynamic and a great charge forward. Suzuki and Katayama, 1 and 2. Then Wendlinger, Hill, Winkelhock, Ratzenberger. Eddie Cheever doing a grand job in the Eurobrun. Then McNish, Leto, and Fabrizio Barbatza. Here comes Bernard trying again on Eric Comas. Down the main straight. Is Comas going to be able to defend from his countryman? Bernard going for it on the inside of the Modena, and that's through, no problem. No problem at all, I think, for the Modena to get by. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Barbatza is dueling wheel to wheel there with one of the Reals. That's McNish he's having a go with. But it looks as though we're going to lose the second of the AGS cars, I'm afraid. Laura Aiello is slowing. Laura Aiello, I'm afraid the AGS team with their Judd engines, they may have a little bit more backing from Duracell, but it certainly isn't making the cars go any quicker, is it? So big problems, I'm afraid, for the team. So a bit of a slow start to the season then for the team at AGS. Laura Aiello is out. And so is the AGS team. They will go no further in Brazil. At least they went a little bit further than the Life Racing team did. So the Cesaris making his... Oh, it looks like there's a Real slowing. So there is a Real dropping down the field. That looks like McNish in trouble. So Alan McNish, I think, is coming towards pit lane. He is slowing. So McNish has got some problems there, I'm afraid. Carl Wendlinger still running solidly in third place. Yeah, McNish is coming into the pits in 20th position. I wonder if he's got some kind of mechanical malady. Whatever it might be, it's dropped him right to the back of the field, I'm afraid. Along with the likes of his teammate Rickard Rydell. Zukio Katayama has a little bit of a mistake there. So the Leighton House driver still having a couple of hiccups there. Interesting scenario, still going strong. Suzuki, Katayama. And then Wendlinger, Hill and Winkelhock. Ratzenberger in P6 from Chiva, Leto, Barbatza and Donnelly. So the field continues to work its way forward. But Suzuki and Katayama having a very solid run of things at the moment. Then Wendlinger, Hill and Winkelhock. From Ratzenberger, Chiva, Leto, Barbatza and Donnelly. Into the pits comes Winkelhock. And also in comes Ratzenberger. So they're coming into the pits together, and so too does JJ Leto of the Monteverdi team. So a lot of pit stops happening all in one go. Expect the top three to be in relatively soon as well. There goes De Cesaris past the pits. Now he's obviously going to move up because he pitted quite early. Guerrero in the pits as well. So too is Paul Tracy for the Modena team. But Ukyo Katayama still following in the wheel tracks of his teammate by about 3 seconds deficit. Wendlinger is there in third position still. There he is in the Jordan, just coming back into view. He is quite a fair way back from the two Leighton House cars. Still they run in first and second places. So De Cesaris has moved his way further forward, but into the pits comes Suzuki. So Suzuki comes into the pits from the lead. So that's obviously a very significant one. That hands the lead over for the moment to Katayama, and Wendlinger is in pit road as well. Katayama has come into the lead, sorry. Suzuki leaves the pit lane. Wendlinger and the Jordan is in pit road as well. Now he needs a quick stop here. 8.9 will do. Ooh, he almost caught the mechanics as they came out of the pits there. Now Damon Hill, staying out of course, has now managed to climb his way to second place. Where's Aguri Suzuki by comparison? There he is. So Suzuki has dropped to third place and Damon Hill has got out in front. Now how much time is he going to lose on old tyres? That's going to be the key factor, and of course that's the position that De Cesaris also finds himself in, having pitted earlier than these guys. Donnelly is in, so too is Martini. So they will obviously drop back a little bit. That's Eric Comas losing some ground in the Minardi, and he's lost out there to Martin Donnelly, I think. No, sorry, he's lost out to Roland Ratzenberger, I should say, who's just pitted. But Donnelly was just coming out of pit road. And they're down in about 15, 16, 17 places, the drivers that have just pitted. So that's about normal. That's about where we expected them to be. Winkelhock having a look at Rydell. And into the pits comes Katayama. So Katayama is coming in pit lane. So this will be interesting to see where he gets out in relation to Wendlinger. Really needs to beat him out. A 9.5 second pit stop should be okay. But there goes Damon Hill into the lead, where he was in America. Oh, and that's Paul Tracy. Paul Tracy, the Canadian, is out of the race. He's got a gearbox problem in the Modena. So I'm afraid that's the Modena out of the race. With the Martini Modena Lamborghini car out of the race, Paul Tracy, the Canadian, is not having the greatest of transitions from IndyCar racing to Grand Prix. Suzuki goes past the pits and has got out in front of his teammate Katayama. Suzuki is only now about 3 seconds behind Hill. Look how quickly he is catching him. That's in one lap. So that just shows you that going heavy is not necessarily the best strategy. It's a bit of a risk, it's a bit of a gamble. Here comes Ratzenberger, making his bid on the inside of Tommy Byrne in the Zach Speed. Beautiful. Lovely job from Ratzenberger, no worries there. And the Austrian puts on another great display. So Damon Hill just continuing his progress up in the lead of the race, but he might not be leading this race for much longer. Here comes Leto up on the inside of Comas, and again he takes the place. There's quite a few opportunities opening up. Here comes Suzuki though, chasing down Damon Hill in the Dallara, eating up the road. Like Bernard may have had some kind of mechanical problems. He came into the pits with smoke billowing out of the back of the car apparently. Look at Suzuki, fastest lap of the race at 1:17.7 in his determination to catch up to Damon Hill, and he's catching him massively. So no problems at all. Surely on the way down this back straight he's going to get his opportunity. Katayama is closing up as well. Here comes Suzuki, diving up the inside. Job done. No issue at all for the Leighton House driver. Now, the big question is going to be, how much time is Damon Hill actually going to lose by staying out? Ratzenberger's on the charge again! Ratzenberger's going for Rydell. It's textbook overtake. Brilliant run. Ronan Ratzenberger's made more overtakes in this race than anybody else by the look of it. He's really on the comeback charge. And this is going to do his confidence no end of good. Ronan Ratzenberger suddenly emerging as a real talent for the future, the Austrian. So now that Suzuki has got himself into the lead of the race, the Leighton House driver can just settle into a bit of a rhythm now. His teammate Katayama is closing in on Damon Hill as well, but with 15 laps to go at the end of 14 laps to go, sorry, at the end of this one. If Damon Hill can stay within about 15 seconds of Katayama, who has just set the fastest lap of the race, trying to close up on Damon Hill as well. Honestly, there's a real little inter-team rivalry going on between Katayama and Suzuki. They both want to be the quickest. They both want to be the one in front of the other. They both want to be the first one to score a point in Formula 1 in 1991. Here's the Cesaris, getting through on the inside of Nicola Larini. So he gets through, no problem again. But the Coloni is not going through to the Grand Prix the way things are currently going. Because we've got the Leighton House, Dallara and Jordan all in front of them. And there is the move from the Monteverdi. So that is JJ Leto getting past Rickard Rydell in the Real. So Katayama trying his best to work his way further forward. Third position, closing Damon Hill hand over fist. And then we've got the two Jordans who are currently looking to go through. Wendlinger and Barbazza, 4th and 5th. Then De Cesaris in the Coloni, Larini and Pirro in the Reynards. And we've got Winkelhock in the Zakspeed and Ratzenberger in the Von Mattel. Still a fair way to go though as Donnelly takes on Comas. Oh, and that was pretty close for Donnelly. He almost skated off the road there. Manages to catch it before he drops the car as Katayama sets another fastest lap in his bid to get past Damon Hill. In fact, he's done it at turn 1. He has done it at turn 1 by the look of it. So Katayama will be the car that appears first in the background. There he is. Yep, he's got into second place past Damon Hill. Got the move at turn 1. Rather sadly, the Brazilian director didn't pick up on that one. But Wendlinger and Barbazza are 4th and 5th for Jordan. Leighton House 1 and 2, and the sole remaining Dallara. There it is. Of Damon Hill, the Scuderia Italia Dallara. And here comes Eddie Cheever. He's going to make the bid on the inside of Tommy Byrne. Good comeback from Eddie Cheever. He seems fired up and motivated in this weekend as Eddie Cheever. They had a reasonable run at Cleveland for a first time of asking, but certainly Ford look like they've got something brewing on the horizon, don't they? Could take a bit of time for them to really get up to speed in 1991, but certainly for next year, they apparently have big plans. There is Eric Bernard in the sole remaining Modena Lamborghini. Katayama, second position. 4.5 seconds back from his teammate, Aguri Suzuki. Two drivers that have already got a bit of a rivalry going in 1991, and they are teammates of the Leighton House team. Way off the far side of the course, and they are down the back straight now. Still the Leighton House Hondas running in first and second place, having a very tidy run of it. There's Damon Hill, and look in the background, there's Wendlinger. So Wendlinger is going to try and secure for the Jordan team their place in the Grand Prix. And that will just keep Wendlinger and the Jordan team a little bit out of harm's way. If they can overtake the Dallara, then that's one more team behind them. Here's Donnelly. anything Ratzenberger can do, Donnelly can do too, as he gets the move there on Tommy Byrne and works his way up into 14th place. Good run from the two Von Metals. They were rather disappointed after Cleveland. They felt that their cars were not really up to scratch and they didn't get the hang of the airport circuit at all. But here in Brazil, the cars are looking much quicker. And Damon Hill is definitely under pressure now from Wendlinger with those aging tyres of his. So Suzuki leads Katayama. There is the distance between the two of them. Katayama having set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix qualifying session so far. Wendlinger is all over the back of Damon Hill though, but Barbatza has dropped back quite considerably to Andrea De Cesaris, so I would suspect that actually Damon Hill is going to be reasonably comfortable unless De Cesaris can catch past Barbatza, because here comes Wendlinger. He's going to move up into third position, and there goes the move. Carl Wendlinger, no problem at all to get into third place past Damon Hill, but Damon Hill has got to stay in front of Fabrizio Barbatza and Andrea De Cesaris for these last 11 laps. He cannot afford to lose that kind of ground, otherwise Dallara won't qualify for the Grand Prix for the second race in a row. Up and over the top of the crest, this is Comas dueling away with JJ Leto, I think that is. Trying to get through on the inside. No, that's Ivan Capelli, his teammate, in fact. And still, Suzuki and Katayama just routinely going about their business up at the front end of the field in this pre-qualifying race. Not a big disaster, not a big concern. Still all going very appeasably at the moment. But certainly no major dramas at the Leighton House Honda team. They've obviously got a very established engine in the Honda. There's big discussions going on about Honda's involvement in Formula One. There was even a suggestion that they may pull out of Formula One completely at the end of 1992. But there's also discussion that they want to take over a team and run a factory operation. So how they would go about doing that is very tricky to know, because at the moment they've got engine deals with Leighton House, with McLaren, with Tyrrell, and with the squad at Coloni. So that could be a lot of teams looking for a new engine deal in 1993. As Andrea De Cesaris makes his bid on the inside of Barbatza. Now that's an important one. So that keeps Coloni very much in the hunt. They've got to try and catch up. Andrea De Cesaris, the man with plenty of experience in Grand Prix racing, is trying to close up on Damon Hill in the Dallara. And at the moment, that's where the danger really is for the Scuderia Italia Dallara team. Onto the home straight, Barbatza having lost out to... Oh, he's slowing, he's got a problem. Loose wheel for Barbatza, so that's one of the Jordans out of the race, I'm afraid. So with 9 laps to go, that's one of the Jordans gone. Now that really doesn't help them out, because there is not quite as so much strength in numbers as there was before. So there is his teammate Carl Wendlinger at third position. And Wendlinger desperately trying to close up on the two Leighton House Hondas in front. There is Damon Hill in the background, and I think looking at the time, Damon Hill is 11 seconds off the lead, but 28 seconds behind the leader is Andrea De Cesaris, so he's got to make sure he doesn't lose 17 seconds in the last 9 laps. I think he should be okay. Looking at his pace, he is doing enough to keep himself very much in the hunt at the moment. But it's still 1 and 2 for these Leighton House cars, as there goes McNish having a look on the inside of the Minardi, another team that really hasn't had a great start to the season by their usual standards. But McNish gets the move done there on the Minardi, and that is going to put the talented young Scotsman up another place. And he's one to watch out for, is young Alan McNish. He has a good opportunity to work his way up the order. Along the main straight comes Suzuki in front of Katayama, Wendlinger, Hill, De Cesaris and Narini. Hero in 7th, Winkelhock is 8th, then it's Ratzenberger, and in 10th place it is Leto, in front of Cheever and Donnelly, from Ricard Rydell, Roberto Guerrero in the 2nd of the Ford Eurobruns, and Ivan Capelli in the 2nd of the Monteverdis. It's Carl Wendlinger. We have 10 laps remaining. Sorry, we have 8 laps remaining. So Suzuki and Katayama, dominant from Leighton House so far. Jordan are there in 3rd position, the 2nd team to go through. And then it's Dallara, the 3rd team to go through. And here comes Ratzenberger. He's not done yet. Ratzenberger still on the warpath. still gets his bid on the inside of Joe Winkelhock and still makes an overtake. Very nicely done from Ratzenberger. He's quickly turning into the driver of the day here. The Austrian going very well indeed in the Fon Matal, which is a team that's had all sorts of shake-ups over the winter. The only thing that has remained the same, really, is their sponsorship deal and their team manager, Ed Hunter. Everything else has pretty much been all change. So they're just trying to hope for a little bit of structure. And so they continue to move forward. So the two Leighton houses still looking good with 7 to go. Suzuki ahead of Katayama, so the elder statesman in front of the young pretender. This is definitely with an all-Japanese combo and an all-Japanese sponsor and a Japanese engine deal. A lot of people are suggesting that if there's going to be a team takeover of one of the smaller teams on the grid by a manufacturer like Honda, then this is almost certainly going to be the team that will do it. Obviously, of course, the Leighton House cars are built by March, which also built the Indy cars for Porsche. So March would probably have something to say about that deal as well. There's Winkelhock trying to make his bid back on the inside of Ratzenberger. Well, that's a rare sight. Ratzenberger being overtaken rather than doing the overtaking. But Smokin' Joe is not done yet. He wants to continue to fight here in Brazil. And there's Alan McNish. Real is going to try and make a move past the other of the Zach Speeds. So that was nicely handled, and no problems at all there to get past Tommy Byrne for Alan McNish. Meanwhile, Suzuki having a good run. Leto. So here comes the opportunity. So through they come again. Katayama. Suzuki and Katayama still riding the crest of the wave. 1 and 2 as they go through. Wendlinger 3rd, Hill 4th, De Cesaris 5th and Larini 6th. Hero in 7th from Winkelhock. And then Leto. Ratzenberger's dropping back a little bit now. What's happened to Ratzenberger? Something is not quite right here. Ratzenberger is slowing. So that's a big problem for the Fon Matal driver, who has definitely been the star of the show so far. But Ratzenberger's got difficulties. The Minardis of Comas and Martini are all over the back of Tommy Byrne. Ratzenberger has slipped back down the order. Here go both of the Minardis past Tommy Byrne now. So I think Tommy Byrne's in trouble as well. Now we've got a couple of drivers that are slow. And Ratzenberger's in the pits. That's why. So Ratzenberger's got some kind of mechanical problem. What a shame. And Tommy Byrne has got an electrical issue. That's why he's coming into the pits. So Ratzenberger and Byrne right at the end of the race here. That's so unfortunate. Such a shame. And two drivers who really deserve to have a little bit more from this race than they're actually going to get. So Ratzenberger gets out of the pits, as you can see, right down in 19th of the 20 runners in this race. You've got a feel for Ratzenberger. A loose wheel, apparently, is the identified cause of his demise, and he has now been lapped by a Aguri Suzuki. It's a real shame. Ratzenberger had a great run up to that point. And certainly he is a star of the future, the young Austrian. Only 6 retirements from this race, so the attrition rate has not been as high as it was in Cleveland, which is good to see. Cars are starting to get a little bit better as the teams are still working on them in between the races. They can't make any upgrades, of course, but they can certainly try and learn more about the setup of the cars. Wendlinger currently running in 3rd place, with Suzuki and Katayama having a solid run of it. We are being told that there is a collective test that is going to happen at Imola just before the San Marino Grand Prix, which the test drivers will be taking the duty of. So all of the test drivers will do the hard work just a few days before the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. And then obviously that will take into account the upgrades that have been made. Oh, Ratzenberger. Well, hang on a minute. What's Ratzenberger doing? Ratzenberger's closing up on the race leader, Aguri Suzuki, to unlap himself by the look of it. So Ratzenberger's not particularly happy being a lap down. And he clearly wants to unlap himself before the end of this encounter. So Roland Ratzenberger, well, why not? He's currently following Aguri Suzuki. If he can catch him and pass him, he's on fresher tyres, don't forget, than the Leighton houses. So they would have put new tyres on the car. So if Ratzenberger is not going to cause a bit of a hold-up for Oguri Suzuki, why shouldn't he go for it? Winkelhock going to make his bid there on Pirro. Reynards are dangerously close to qualification if something happens up front. Larini and Pirro are 6th and 7th at the moment. From Winkelhock in the Zach Speed, Leto in the Monteverdi, and the Ford European of Eddie Cheever in 10th place ahead of the Fonmetal of Martin Donnelly. And this is the difficulty this early in the season. All of the teams are very evenly matched, so it all comes down to what the driver can get out of them on that circuit on the day. You're going to have peaks and troughs all through the season where some teams will go stronger on some circuits and then they'll go really quite a tough weekend on other circuits. That's the ebb and flow of Grand Prix racing for you. There's a good Suzuki. And there is Roland Ratzenberger, and Ratzenberger is just following in the wheel tracks of the Leighton House. Well, he might get the fastest lap of the race if he's in the slipstream. So why on earth not? So this could be a very interesting run for all of the contenders. Team boss Andrew Sampson of the Leighton House team is a little bit wary of Roland Ratzenberger, who is climbing all over the back of the Leighton House. This is a fascinating dynamic. Ratzenberger clearly out to prove to everybody that he's still the star of the show. He's still the best driver out there as far as he's concerned. And he might have an opportunity here to go for a Goody Suzuki. There's 2 laps to go at the end of this one. And Ratzenberger is absolutely on the charge. He's got better tyres than Suzuki. So if he can sit in the slipstream, he might just unlap himself. But that is holding Suzuki up a little bit because he's got 3 seconds now to Katayama. The gap was at about 4.7 at one point. Surely Ratzenberger isn't going to throw this up the inside in turn 1. He doesn't in the end. Just decides to stay on his back. This is going to be an interesting one as they come off the turn, down the back straight, and Ratzenberger's got a good run. He's got a good run off the S's, and he's going to go for it. He's going to dive in on the inside, and Ratzenberger unlaps himself. Oh, and Wendlinger's out. Wendlinger's out. That's a disaster for Jordan. 2 laps from the end, and the Jordan is out. So Wendlinger parks the Jordan, and I'm afraid with 2 laps to run, the Jordan team are not going to qualify. So that is pretty disastrous. And I think he's not the only one in trouble. I think there's another car dropping down the field. That's Emanuele Pirro. Pirro is out. Pirro is out in the Reynard. So the Rini's come across the line, but Pirro is out of the race as well, I'm afraid. So that's 2 cars now in trouble. We're going to try and see if we can find what's happened to Pirro. Ah, there it is. So Pirro has come to a stop as well. You got a feel for Emanuele Pirro. He was in the top 10. So that is going to elevate Winkelhock up into 6th position. Leto's going to go up to 7th. Cheever's going to go up to 8th. Donnelly is going to go up to 9th place. And then Guerrero in the 2nd of the Ford Eurobrins. Well, you've got to feel in particular for Ratzenberger. He could have got himself up the order there. Well, at least Ratzenberger has been able to show up a Goody Suzuki by unlapping himself, and that has actually held up Suzuki quite considerably. Look, as he's now lost another second or so to Katayama. Ratzenberger's just disappearing. Bye, boys. I'm not going to be lapped. Thanks very much. I'm going to complete the full race distance, if you don't mind. So, big disappointment. So the contenders are working strong. Here's Damon Hill. Andrea De Cesare is quite a way behind him. He's actually in danger of being unlapped himself here, Damon Hill, by the way with Tommy Byrne. With Tommy Byrne, who had his electrical problems earlier on, if he can catch and pass Damon Hill on very old tyres, then that will obviously showcase what Tommy Byrne can do. But the battle continues, and Suzuki, Katayama and Hill are going to be in the top 3, so it's going to be Leighton House from Dallara, and the 3rd team that gets in, the way things currently stand, is going to be Coloni, just ahead of Reynard. So a very solid and sturdy run for the Leighton House team. No problems at all for them as they continue to put on a stirring show. And they are 15 seconds clear of anybody else. The Leighton House team really have been dominant in this one, so it's going to be a Goody Suzuki that takes the checkered flag in the pre-qualifying race. Leighton House will go through. No problems at all from their standpoint. So and Winkelhock is slowing. Gearbox problem on the last lap. So Winkelhock is going to slow to a crawl and park it. Oh dear. All sorts of last-minute dramas here. So Winkelhock is not going to be classified in the top 10 after all. Leto's going to be P6, Cheever will be 7th, Donnelly 8th, Guerrero 9th, and Capelli will be 10th. Well, Damon Hill manages to get through in 3rd position in the Dallara by going long on the tyre strategy. So he actually manages to get it through this time. He doesn't take the win like he was aiming for in Cleveland, but he comes home in 3rd. And in 4th place, it is Andrea De Cesaris in the Coloni. Well, Capelli and McNish are having a nice little battle on the final lap. Capelli's managed to get through past McNish. Guerrero's dropping back as well. The Guerrero's having a very difficult end to proceedings as they come across the line to finish up. Suzuki may have taken the victory, Katayama may have taken 2nd, and Hill and De Cesaris may have qualified. But I think it's universally acknowledged driver of the day has to go to Roland Ratzenberger, certainly the feistiest of all the drivers out there. Did a brilliant job making some great overtakes. He was just very unfortunate that he had a mechanical issue towards the latter stages. So Suzuki and Katayama 1 and 2 for Leighton House, then Damon Hill and Andrea De Cesaris. Dallara and Coloni go through with Leighton House. Larini just missing out in 5th from Leto in the Monteverde, Cheever in the Eurobrunn Ford, Donnelly, Capelli and McNish in the top 10 from Rydell, Roberto Guerrero, Eric Comas and Pierluigi Martini in the 2 Minardis. Then it's Eric Bernard in the Modena from Ratzenberger, very disappointed, but in 16th and putting on a show. The Zach Speeds and Carl Wendlinger are still technically classified, as is Emanuele Pirro. And then Barbazza, Tracy, Aiello, Herbert, Moreno and Noda were the retirements from a very thrilling pre-qualifier here in Brazil. And the only piece of information left to determine is the fastest lap. And there's no surprises. It's Leighton House, 1 and 2 from Wendlinger, Herbert and Moreno. This time it's Leighton House that gets the thrills of victory. Very unfortunate there at the end for Jordan, but it is Coloni and Dallara that join them in the Grand Prix qualifying session here in Brazil. So, off to the Grand Prix grid, and it's going to be a thriller. 72 laps around the Interlagos circuit. So the battles are going to be very strong indeed as we get ourselves ready for the action in front of us. We're going to have a very solid battle up the road, but it's going to be a Brazilian Grand Prix to remember up at the front end of the field. Apologies for the slight break in transmission. We'll get it sorted as soon as possible. But it's certainly the 2 McLarens on the front row from Schumacher and Alesi. Then it is Patrese. Frentzen and Hakkinen are on the 5th row of the grid from Prost and Piquet off the start. There's going to be some good battles further back as well, as we're going to see the grid is obviously well formed of Gugelmin and Suzuki. Brundle and Warwick are in the mix there as well. Boutsen and Irvine really struggling in qualifying. Senna is the one up on the 3rd row of the grid in P6 of the grid. Modena and Damon Hill. And then it is Johnny Herbert and Ukyo Katayama. And then we have Mark Blundell, Adrian Fernandez. And then at the back of the grid, it is the 2 Colonis of Moreno and De Cesaris. So we're going to go ready for racing here in Brazil. And it's Gerhard Berger who bags the pole position from Nannini, Mansell and Senna, Schumacher and Alesi, Patrese, Alboreto, Frentzen and Hakkinen. Mansell is the fastest of the 2 Ferraris on this occasion. Schumacher going to be starting down in P5 of the grid, having won in Cleveland. What can Senna do in front of his home fans? Here we go. Terrible start for Mansell, and Schumacher is held up as a result. What a flyer from the Tyrrell of Alesi. Senna's made a good start as well, up to 3rd position. The 2 McLarens fighting their way forward, up into the first corner. Alesi's going to get into 2nd. Brilliant start from Alesi. The Tyrrell charges forward, and so that's Nannini, Berger and Alesi. So Berger around the outside manages to catch back into 2nd position. So it's the McLarens 1st and 2nd, Nannini and Berger, but Alesi made a good start there up to 3rd. And Schumacher's already trying to attack his teammate Mansell, and he's gone through. He's got past Senna as well. So Schumacher trying to make up for some of the lost time behind his own teammate. Nannini, Berger, Alesi, Schumacher, Senna and Mansell. And here goes Mansell having a look at Senna. Can't get through. And that's the fast starting Frenson in P7 as well. In front of Patrese, Prost, Piquet, Alboreto, Suzuki and Hakkinen. So Nannini and Berger having a very solid start. But an interesting situation there for a couple of the drivers. Now, there's already discussion of a jump start for Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. Now, that would be very controversial if that was the case. But obviously, he's got a good start there by comparison to his teammate Mansell. I think he might have just timed it to perfection. But anyway, Nannini and Berger, the two McLarens going wheel to wheel, and there could be a little bit of a duel between them for the lead. As Senna has got Nigel Mansell breathing down his neck. Nannini's got the fastest lap of the race, but Berger's taken the lead at turn 1. As Senna is going to lose out here to Mansell, and Piquet's going to get past Prost. So several cars making some good moves there, but unfortunately we were on board with the wrong one at the wrong time. But yes, Berger is your leader now. Nannini in second, then Schumacher, Alesi, Mansell and Senna. And it looks as though Senna is really struggling at the start here. Frenson's gone through now past Senna. I wonder if he's on a heavy fuel load as well. Because there could be some drivers going for 2 stops and some drivers going for only 1. So Berger, Nannini, Schumacher, Alesi, Mansell, Frenson. Then Senna, Patrese, Piquet and Prost. The Goody Suzuki's made a terrific start in the Leighton house. The team having just come through from pre-qualifying, don't forget. And Suzuki's all the way up in 11th. Alboreto, then Hakkinen, the reigning world champion. And the 2 Lolas of Gugelmin and Modena. So, still an interesting run of it. Berger, Nannini, Schumacher, Alesi, Mansell, Frenson. A long race ahead of us here, and Berger bangs in the fastest lap of the race. Here comes Mansell making his bid on Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. Is this going to be McLarens versus Ferraris? Yes, it is. Mansell gets into 4th place, so Alesi drops to 5th. And how about this? It's McLaren, Ferrari, Tyrrell. So the competitors run through. Oh, that's Thierry Boutsen slowing already. Thierry Boutsen. Oh, my goodness. He's pulled off right in front of Johnny Herbert. In the Dallara, it's gearbox problems for Thierry Boutsen at the beginning of lap 3. Now, what's happened there? Boutsen was tucked up behind one of the Benettons, and it looked like he pulled off the road. Yeah, he pulls wide, but he doesn't actually pull off the road, and then Damon Hill nudges him. It's actually Hill, not Herbert, but Hill nudges him for good effect. Now, Damon is going to say, I didn't really have anywhere to go, because Thierry Boutsen slowed the car down directly in front of me. But that's very disappointing for Thierry Boutsen, isn't it? And the Porsche Blaupunkt Williams is now very much out of this race for Thierry Boutsen, who is already looking quite demoralised these days. This is only the start of 1991, and he's had a very short Brazilian Grand Prix. He didn't have a particularly impressive US Grand Prix at Cleveland either. But Senna, in front of his loyal home fans, is still going strong in the top 10. So Berger leads his teammate Nannini. McLaren really have come out of the blocks here fighting fit. And you do start to wonder, why on earth did Ayrton Senna choose to leave? Well, obviously the paycheck from Porsche would have been pretty substantial for Ayrton Senna. Frenson in P6. So this is going to be an interesting charge forward from Frenson, as he makes his bid now to get past his teammate Alesi and takes it. Modena in the Lola, dueling away there with one of the Lotus cars. I think that's got to be Derek Warwick, hasn't it? As Alboreto is already a few places up the road. Suzuki now dropping back into 13th place. That's one of the Brabhams on the move. That's Prost getting past Patrese. Now for once, Alain Prost looks fairly fired up in the Brabham today. Seems to have found his rhythm in this car. He knew going into this season it was going to be a year of development with the Ilmor engine. But obviously, Prost is very adamant about the fact that he wants to be in a competitive car. So Berger and Nannini, the 2 McLarens, 1 and 2. Then Schumacher and Mansell and the Ferraris. Then Frenson and Alesi in the Tyrrells. Then the 2 Brazilians, Senna and Piquet. And then it's Prost and Patrese. Those are the point scorers at the moment. Look at the way that Schumacher's closing in on Nannini, though. The McLarens are not going to be able to live with Schumacher for very much longer. This talented German really is an inspiring sight in that Ferrari. And he is absolutely galvanising the whole Ferrari team. Even Mansell's struggling to keep up with Schumacher, as Brundle has got problems to his inside. That is one of the Arrows cars. That's got to be Fernandez. So Brundle loses out to Adrian Fernandez in the Arrows BMW. And Berger climbing up the hill, having a great run in the lead of the race. But Nannini has got Schumacher all over him at the moment. So the McLarens are running 1 and 2. There's Alboreto, and he's got the reigning world champion Mika Häkkinen all over the back of him. Häkkinen's going to dive for the inside. No, you don't. So Häkkinen cannot get by. Now you've got to wonder, how long is a frustrated Mika Häkkinen going to stay with the Brabham team? He stayed loyal to them for 1991. But there's already a growing list of teams that are considering his services for 92. Apparently both McLaren and Ferrari are on that list. As Berger continues on his way in the McLaren. He's quite happy apparently, because now that Senna's gone and Nannini's come in, he is very happy to be the team captain. And he feels that this is his best shot yet of going to the World Championship title. Now, let's look at the fuel loads. Berger's a little bit lighter than Nannini. Schumacher's lighter than Nannini as well. Mansell going a bit further in. Frenson's on a light fuel load. Now Alesi's on a heavy fuel load. That'll be why he's lost some positions. Now, what about Nelson Piquet? Because he's got past Ayrton Senna. He's on a light fuel load in the Arrows, so that's why he's making big progress so far. And Piquet's going to make the bid here on the inside of Alesi. And Piquet will get the move. Yes, he will. So a light-fueled Arrows is able to get up to P6 in the hands of Nelson Piquet, the 3-time world champion. Very similar to that of Alain Prost, of course, who won his world titles in 85, 86 and 89. But Nelson Piquet, the most successful Brazilian racing driver of all time, and as far as championship titles are concerned. Senna has won 1, Fittipaldi has won 2, but Piquet has won 3. It's a very long-faced stay in the office for the Benetton team. And their team principal, everybody affectionately knows her as Last Lap Lucy. And that is Marc Blundell, struggling to find a way past the Ligier at the moment. And it does look as though those Porsche engines have not started the season the way they were hoping to. They've got a lot of work to do at Stuttgart, haven't they? It's not gone according to plan, their start of the season. But obviously they've got some interesting upgrades to make. So, as the season having a bit of an interesting time of it. Well, apologies if you've lost your picture for a moment, but you haven't missed anything. Only Boutsen out of the race. Berger is your leader. Schumacher is up to second. He got past Nannini. I didn't see where he did it. But it's now McLaren, Ferrari, Tyrrell, Arrows at the moment. Ayrton Senna is being caught by Alain Prost. And those two have already had their fair share of arguments before. Neither of them are still in the McLaren team that ended up causing issues. Apparently there's a rumour going around that Prost wants to get back in at McLaren. Now that Senna's gone off to Williams, he kind of feels that obviously the McLaren is the best car on the grid. And he's a 3-time world champion, so he deserves a shot at a 4th world title. Warwick's going to have a bit of pressure here from the Coloni, trying to get through on the inside. What is going on at Lotus and Benetton at the start of the year? 2 teams that we were talking about getting victories last year. They've just not had a good start to the season at all. This is Blundell trying to get the move on the inside of the Lotus. We didn't see if that one ended successfully or not. There's Alboreto. Oh, that move wasn't successful. He was trying to get past Riccardo Patrese in the Ligier. And Patrese continues on his way. And apparently there's quite a lot of people are talking about a few drivers on this grid as to how long are their careers actually going to continue beyond the 1991 season in Formula 1. Because there's a lot of opportunities coming in at the rejuvenated Sports Car World Championship, which is going to be very long-term project for quite a few teams now. And also, of course, over in IndyCar in America, quite a few opportunities. Emerson Fittipaldi keeps trying to tempt his good mate Nelson Piquet to come and have a play. And there's rumours arrived that even Ayrton Senna's considering an American switch. Well, if Prost gets the move on the inside of Senna, that's going to compound his woes even more. And Prost does indeed pass Senna. Brabham passes the Williams. It's a very tough start to the season then for Porsche Williams, but there's a long way still to go in this one. Moreno diving up the inside of Eddie Irvine. So Moreno in the Coloni gets past the Ligier of Eddie Irvine. Not a great start so far for Eddie Irvine in Formula 1. Michael Schumacher currently second in front of Nannini and Mansell. Looks as though there's been a change of position in the field. a couple of shuffles of the deck there. I think Suzuki's managed to get the move on Adrian Fernandez at some point to fend off the Arrows driver from Mexico. But Berger leads Schumacher, Nannini, Mansell, Frentzen, Piquet, Alesi and Prost. Battle continues. Berger is just continuing to consolidate his lead over Schumacher. The gap is about 4 seconds at the present moment. And we know that everybody basically in the top 5 is on a light fuel load. So too is Piquet. But Alesi and Senna, by the look of it, are both on heavy fuel strategies. They're only going to pit once in this race. So expect Alesi and Senna to be fighting for a top 5 position in this Grand Prix by the time we get to the checkered flag. But they've got to make the tyres last. Moreno diving up the inside of Warwick. Derek Warwick's having a miserable day. So no problem at all to get past the Lotus. But yeah, there's definitely some handling issues at the Lotus team, isn't there? They're not quite getting what they deserve out of this so far. Nannini out in the lead of the battle between him and Mansell. Nigel Mansell is now stepping up the attack on Alessandro Nannini. He is starting to catch him as Nelson Piquet runs. Well, oh, Piquet's gone off the road in the Arrows. Well, that was a scary moment for the 3-time world champion. Piquet just elapsed in concentration, and that's allowed Alesi, Prost, Senna and Hakkinen to reel him in a little bit there. Look at the quality of that chasing pack behind Piquet. You've got Alesi, race winner last year, Prost, 3-time champion, Senna, 88 champion, Hakkinen, 90 champion. And they're all chasing after a 3-time champion. Here goes Alesi. Alesi making his bid on the inside of Piquet. Take that. And considering he's on a heavy fuel load as well, Piquet's going to come back at him. Alesi tried his best, but Piquet will not let that one get away lightly. A bit of a scary moment, but it's not going to be an overtake as far as Piquet is concerned. So still the battle rages. Patrese is going to lose out here to Alboreto. Alboreto gets through. So a nice overtaking move from the Ligier. 10 laps gone and 61 to go. It's a long race, the Brazilian Grand Prix. And Nannini, look, is under pressure from Mansell. Mansell is really starting to eat into the McLaren's advantage. They go down the hill, up to Jinsao. It's a very unusual circuit of Grand Prix racing, anti-clockwise in configuration. There's not many of them on the calendar. It's certainly a very solid start to things. There is discussion of another anti-clockwise Grand Prix circuit added to the calendar, and that would be likely to be the South African Grand Prix returning at Kyalami. There's discussions about that for 1992. It would be the first time that we'd had the South African Grand Prix running at Kyalami since 1985 when Nigel Mansell won in the Williams. And there's Hakkinen making his bid on the inside of his teammate. So Hakkinen passes Prost. That means that Senna has managed to get past Alain Prost, and so too has Hakkinen. So what's happened to Prost? Well, Prost is dropping back a little bit now. Doesn't look like there's a problem with the car on the dash, but certainly Prost is dropping back. Alesi's gone through, Senna's gone through, Hakkinen's gone through, and now Prost is coming back at his teammate. Oh, 2 fired up champions racing in the same team. You've got to be very careful about these things. So, really intriguing, really fascinating battle between these guys as they continue to make progress. But yeah, fascinating stuff so far. Something like this is going to be done very quickly. There's Moreno making his bid to move forward. But still a very solid battle from the contenders as they make more progress around the course. So Berger, Schumacher, Nannini, Mansell, Frentzen and Piquet. And then John Alesi in front of Senna, Hakkinen and Prost. And there is Michael Schumacher going into lap number 13. Chasing down Gerhard Berger, the race leader in the McLaren. Berger has yet to win a race in 1991. Schumacher has, as he won 2 weeks ago on the Berkeley Front Airport. There's Alboreto, now trying not to lose out to Fernandez. Too late, Fernandez has already got him. So a good run this from the Arrows team today. 6th and 12th at the moment. There's Blundell, going past someone very quickly. Is that his teammate? Yes it is, it's Brundle. So I'm afraid Martin Brundle and the Benetton team really struggling. And that looked like both the Leighton houses are now past him. Oh dear, it's a very slow start to the season for Benetton, isn't it? Electrical problems then for Martin Brundle. Well, that's not what they were hoping for at all. So Martin Brundle just trying to get the car back to the pits, I think, but Cesaris is flying past him very quickly. Oh, and Mansell's out! Mansell's out! Gearbox problems! Ah, that's the Ferrari gone for the second race in a row for Nigel Mansell. A very fed-up Brummy Nigel Mansell, not happy in the slightest, and now Brundle has parked it as well. So Brundle in trouble, out of the race. Mansell in trouble, out of the race. So the two men from Birmingham and Kings Lynn, respectfully, are now out of the Brazilian Grand Prix of 1991. Berger is your leader. Schumacher in the Ferrari is second. Nannini is third. Frentzen is fourth. And in fifth place is Piquet in the Arrows. Here comes Prost trying to dive back on the inside of Senna. This time, Senna is not going to let his main rival in Formula One get through. So Fernandez is doing his best. He's managed to move up to 11th place. He's just one place out of the points now. But the retirement for Mansell has elevated the Tyrrells to 4th and 6th. So that's good news for Ken Tyrrell and Sam Hall, the men behind the Tyrrell squad. Winding their way around the far side and up the climb. There is Michael Schumacher. 6.4 seconds back from Berger. The Ferrari just doesn't have the pace of the McLaren so far today. So Schumacher just trying to get himself into as neat a rhythm as possible. He's on the same strategy as Berger as well, so he's just got to keep it neat and tidy throughout, basically. Ferrari coaxes its way through the S's. There's Nannini and Frentzen in 4th place. Now here comes Mika Häkkinen. Häkkinen trying to get his way past Jean Alesi. Alesi resists. Let's not forget that Häkkinen was champion last year. Alesi was second in the standings. So these two definitely looking likely to be the future of Formula One between the two of them. There's even a wild rumour that the pair of them would team up next year at the Tyrrell team if Häkkinen were to jump ship and go somewhere else. I'm feeling that Heinz-Harald Frentzen would have something to say about that, the way he's currently performing. I think you'll find I'm ahead of the 1990 world champion, we'll say Heinz-Harald. There's Mark Blundell chasing down Riccardo Patrese. But of course, silly season in Formula One is just that. A lot of the suggestions are not very clear of the mark as Patrese shuts the door on Mark Blundell in the Benetton. But still they battle on. Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, leading comfortably in the battle to chase down the McLaren. Nannini is third, Frentzen is fourth, then Piquet, Alesi, Häkkinen, Senna, Prost and Gugelmin. So Gugelmin is back in the points again on home soil for the Lola team, with the Brazilian driver, hoping that he can score a decent set of points too. Piquet comes into the pits, so Piquet is the first of the big players to make a pit stop here. The Arrows BMW driver comes in first. Now, the close nature of the field means that he's going to drop outside the top 15 here, no problem at all. And he's going to drop down to about 20th, I would think. Long stop, 10.1 seconds. He does indeed drop to 20th place. There's Nelson Piquet. Moreno comes into the pits as well, though. 21st goes Moreno. So, with Formula One being as close as it is, you really do drop to the back of the field when you make a pit stop. So there is the race leader, Gerhard Berger. Mark Blundell tries again on Patrese. No chance. What a tough day this is turning out to be for Benetton. And apparently they have got some big upgrades coming for Europe. That's where we could see a really major change in fortunes for the Benetton team. So up and over the top of the crest, Schumacher in front of Nannini. Frentzen is in the mix there as well. Alesi, Häkkinen, Prost, Senna, Gugelmin and Fernandez. And Frentzen is in the pits in 4th position in the Tyrrell. So he's not hanging around. It's a good opportunity here for Frentzen and he knows it. There could be a great chance of a top 5 finish. He pitted in from 4th position. He was there on merit. That wasn't... Oh, that's Piquet! Piquet's come straight out of the pits and retired from the race. So he's got a brake issue. So Piquet's literally had a pit stop, come straight back out again. And I'm afraid Nelson Piquet is out of the Brazilian Grand Prix. So that's game over for the 3-time world champion. And he'll be very unhappy indeed about that. He hasn't really looked this uncompetitive for a long time, not since he was with Lotus in 1988. So a very tricky run for Nelson Piquet. He certainly looked strong in 1990 for a fair few races. And Fernandez having some difficulties. De Cesaris is in the pits now as well. So Fernandez has pitted, De Cesaris has pitted, and we're watching Roberto Moreno on home soil. There's Gerhard Berger. Now, are we about to see the McLaren swing for the pits? Yes, we are. So Berger is coming into the pits from the lead. So Gerhard Berger heading into pit road. This is obviously to get a decent run in terms of the battle for the victory. So Berger is in the pits. Schumacher continues. The McLaren team looking good for the win at the moment, but it's very early stages. Stop. 9.9 seconds, that'll do. Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari is now out in front of Alessandro Nannini, the second of the McLaren drivers leading up to this point. But Nannini takes over the mantle, and Häkkinen has come up to third position in all of this, because obviously Frentzen has pitted, Piquet's retired, and Berger has pitted. So Häkkinen is up to third, Alesi is now fourth, Prost is in fifth, and Senna is in sixth position. So Senna has dropped back behind Prost once again. But don't forget that that's all tactical for Senna, because he's on a very heavy fuel load. And I think Prost will be quite frustrated about the fact that he can't keep up with his teammate Häkkinen, despite the fact they're on a similar fuel load to each other. Perhaps Alain Prost is not... Oh, that's Alboreto! Engine failure in the Lotus. Alboreto having just put the Lotus into the points. I'm afraid it's all done for Alboreto. He really needs to park that. Look, a real problem for Suzuki in the Leighton house, trying to get past him. And Katayama having the same problem as well. You can barely see a thing when you're sat behind that Lotus. And Alboreto not exactly being very helpful here at all. Now, the officials could throw the book at him for that. Frentzen not very happy with Alboreto either. And to be honest, Michele Alboreto, a Grand Prix driver of some years, and a race winner too, really should know better. So Michele Alboreto of the Lotus team pulls off the road. But, well, there could be a very interesting conversation about that one later. Because Michele Alboreto, I'm afraid, is out of this race. So Alessandro Nannini continues on his way. Second position for the McLaren driver. And Mika Häkkinen is currently in third as a result of the pit stop rotation. The Brabhams do still both need to stop, as does Jean Alesi, but obviously with a pit stop for... now, who is it that's just made the pit stop that was between Häkkinen and Prost? I think actually Prost has overtaken Jean Alesi. So Katayama is battling away with Frentzen. And Frentzen needs to dispense with the Leighton house quite quickly, actually, because he's in the battle for a podium here. He might just have an outside shot of it too. Nannini going across the line. Schumacher's in the pit. Schumacher is in pit lane. So the Ferrari is in the pits. This is going to need to be a relatively quick stop, and he's going for a two-stop strategy. So Schumacher's obviously got another stop to do later in the race. 9.6, that's quicker than they managed at McLaren for Berger as Prost goes by the pit lane and up to second place. So Nannini is in the lead. Häkkinen has pitted as well. So Häkkinen on the same lap as Schumacher has pitted as Frentzen. Oh, Frentzen tries to make the bid there on Katayama. Now this is going to be an interesting conversation politically, isn't it? Because what do both teams have in common? Honda engines. Frentzen is obviously a little further up the grid than the Leighton house pair. There's Alain Prost in the Brabham. Second position. That's the highest he's run for quite a considerable few months of racing. He's in front of Gerhard Berger. Berger having already pitted, don't forget. Schumacher's pitted too and has rejoined in 7th. Berger's rejoined 3rd. So Schumacher's actually lost about 3 or 4 seconds in the grand scheme of things, because Berger has emerged in 3rd and Schumacher has emerged down in 7th behind Gugelmin. That is not really according to the script for Ferrari. So Gerhard Berger now trying to close up on Alain Prost. Is Prost going to make the bid for the pit lane himself now? Yes, he does. So Prost dives for the pit lane. Berger going through. So Nannini and Berger, 1 and 2. Alesi's up to 3rd. Senna's up to 4th. Alesi and Senna going long on the strategy, of course. And Alain Prost comes down pit lane. Look at that. He was on fumes. Less than a lap of fuel to go. If he'd have stayed out one lap longer, he would have run out of fuel there. He really was running on empty. These cars are very thirsty in 1991. 9.6, another good stop there from the Brabham team this time. And Prost is going to drop down to about 13th, I would have thought. Suzuki's in the pits as well from the Leighton House team. So Nannini, Berger, Alesi, Senna, Gugelmin, and Michael Schumacher. That's the top 6 at the moment. Schumacher in the Ferrari having pitted, Berger having pitted. But Berger is a good 17 seconds back from his teammate Nannini, who has yet to pit. As Irvine in the Ligier looking a little bit sluggish. And Irvine has lost out to Mika Hakkinen, the 1990 world champion. So Irvine's going up the hill. There's Alessandro Nannini. A perfect situation for the Italian. He was obviously gifted the 1989 Japanese Grand Prix. And that's Stefano Modena. Modena's got a real problem on the left front. You can see it there for yourself. That is a loose wheel in the Lola. And I'm afraid Stefano Modena is going no further. He will not score points like he did in America. So Modena is out of the Grand Prix. Very unfortunate indeed for the Italian driver, I should say, here in Brazil. So Stefano Modena retires from the race. His teammate is up in P5 though. So yet again, the Lola charge is actually doing very well overall. Modena out to the race, admittedly. Katayama comes into the pits from what was the points. That's going to drop him back behind the Dalaras of Hill and Herbert now. And there is Johnny Herbert, about to lose out to Fernandez in the Arrows. So there goes Fernandez through into 14th place past the British driver Johnny Herbert. Johnny still really trying to establish himself as a talent. Is that Blundell slowing? It is indeed. Gearbox problems at Benetton. That is the Benetton race over. So I'm afraid from the first 2 races of the season for Benetton, it's a big fat nothing. Very unfortunate for the team as into the pits comes Nannini. So Nannini comes into the pits from the lead. And I'm afraid Mark Blundell joins his teammate Martin Brundle on the sidelines. And Benetton are out of the first 2 races of the season. It's a long way to go. Still 14 races left in 1991. And that's a terrible start to the year for Benetton. Not a single point scored. There is Ayrton Senna, 3rd position in the Williams. Going long on the strategy. Staying close to Alesi. This is still a good chance for Senna. You never know what's going to happen. So Ayrton Senna in the Porsche Williams, just keeping himself neat and tidy, but he's well aware of the fact that this is a tough year. It's going to be a tough season in 1991, but he feels that the Williams can be a race-winning car. Of course, officially, you have to call it a Porsche Williams nowadays, because Porsche really want to have a controlling stake in the Williams team. I don't know how Frank Williams and Scott Woodward, who control the interests of that team, are going to think about that, but certainly for the moment, it is a Porsche Williams. Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. And now we watch Prost trying to have a go at Warwick. So Prost and Warwick, both drivers that have raced for the Renault factory team in the past. There is currently no Renault factory team, although there is always that possibility that Renault decide they want to have another go at things. They were feeling a little bit bitter about the fact they were snubbed by Williams in favour of Porsche for 1991. And so Renault, their plans changed considerably as far as they're concerned. Mauricio Gugelmin is now coming down pit road at 1/3 distance as Frentzen makes his bid for Patrese. And the German is going to go through no problem. So Frentzen goes through in the Tyrrell, up into 6th position as Roberto Moreno has a moment in the Coloni. Locks up there at the top of the hill, manages to keep the car going though. So Roberto Moreno in the Coloni having a bit of a tricky time of it at present. So some difficult moments then for the Coloni team. Still they are making a good show of it as they put on a brave face. Alesi continues on its way. Gugelmin hanging on in front of Fernandez. No, he isn't, because Fernandez has just got through as we watch Damon Hill in the Ferrari-powered Dallara. So a very solid situation so far for the contenders. But Berger, Alesi, Senna, Schumacher and Nannini is the top 5 at the present moment. And look how close it is between the top 4. Because you've got Schumacher bearing down on Senna and Alesi as well, so Schumacher is catching them up. And he's actually taken 3 seconds out of Berger's lead overall. So the Ferrari is making good ground here. He's not getting back into race-winning mode yet, but he is going to try and make the bid for Senna. So there goes Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari down the inside of Ayrton Senna. Senna does not fight him. There's not a lot of point. He's got a long race ahead of him on a differing strategy to Schumacher, so he lets the Ferrari go. But this is not good news for Berger. There's Gugelmin dueling away with Fernandez once again, and they've swapped positions twice, and now they're going to do it again. So Gugelmin gets back through now on Adrian Fernandez. The Mexican driver falls back to 14th once more. And there's Irvine. He's having to go for the final point in the Grand Prix past Warwick, and he's got there. Up into 10th place goes Eddie Irvine. So both Ligiers are now in the points, 7th and 10th. That's going to be very good news for Will Knight, the team boss of that squad. So up the hill comes Gerhard Berger, 1.4 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. And here comes Berger into the pits. Berger's pitting. What's going on? He's got a problem. Electrical issues for Gerhard Berger in the lead. So Gerhard Berger slowing from P1, and the race leader comes into the pits with an electrical issue. You can see it on the dash. They're going to have to reboot the engine and start him up again. But that means that the McLaren win for the moment is gone. And who's leading? It's Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. And Jean Alesi still needs to make a pit stop, don't forget. So Alesi leads, Schumacher is second, Senna is third, Nannini is still fourth. The gap between the top 4 drivers is less than 4 seconds. Now we've got a Grand Prix on. Look at it, Alesi, Schumacher, Senna, and in the background you can just about make out Alessandro Nannini, who is actually lapping quicker than all 3 of these guys up front. Gugelmin bearing down on Damon Hill. Now Berger has rejoined, I can tell you. He is in 9th place. He's got a lot of time to make up. So Gerhard Berger is 27 seconds off the lead. Here comes Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. Just like that, the Ferrari fortunes have turned around. Berger with electrical problems on lap 25. As we complete lap 26, it is Schumacher chasing down Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. So the Red Bull Tyrrell Honda leads the way. And here's Berger. He's getting straight back on with it. He passes Prost like he's standing still. So Gerhard Berger, head down, get on with it. And his team boss, Dave Goddard, will be absolutely insistent to him. Just push like hell. Let's see what happens. So Gerhard Berger is not giving up on the chance of a podium at least. Still a long way to go, and he's got just under half a minute to make up. But look at Schumacher, all over the back of Jean Alesi. Alesi is just trying to hang on to this lead for as long as possible, but Schumacher is right with him. Schumacher in the Ferrari tries. Yeah, there's no way Jean Alesi is going to give that kind of space. Schumacher's getting frustrated, sat behind the Frenchman. Alesi in the Tyrrell. Schumacher in the Ferrari. Senna in the Porsche Williams. Nannini in the McLaren. The gap between the 4 of them has come down to 2.5 seconds. Nannini is absolutely flying. Nannini's going quicker than Schumacher. Schumacher's putting pressure on Alesi. Nannini's caught right up to the back of Senna. We could get a double overtake. Here comes Schumacher. Dives on the inside for Jean Alesi. Dives in into turn 1. And Schumacher goes through. Alesi's trying to fight back, but he can't make it happen. So Schumacher takes the lead. Alesi second. Senna third. Nannini fourth. 2.5 seconds between them all. Look at it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ferrari, Tyrrell, Porsche Williams, and McLaren. But Ferrari hits the front. And that's really the first time all Grand Prix that a Ferrari has led on merit. Gugelmin still dueling away with Derek Warwick. This is Lotus versus Lola. And each team only has 1 car still left in the race. Gugelmin gets it for the moment. Gets the dive on Derek Warwick. A nice run so far. And now Katayama and Suzuki are still dueling. Goodness me, they've managed to get through to the Grand Prix. Neither of them are in the points at the moment, so they've got to race against somebody. They'll race against each other. Here comes Senna, not far away from his pit stop. And Jean Alesi is not far from his either, so it won't be too long until they both have to make pit stops. But Schumacher is going to need to make a pit stop about 12 laps after that. So across the line, and look at Nannini. Nannini's looking really threatening behind Senna. Here comes the move from the Italian. This is going to put the smile back on McLaren's face. That'll do nicely. Nannini up to third position and chasing down Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. Well, this is a great Brazilian Grand Prix. So many battles. And speaking of battles, that's Warwick and Irvine. So Irvine to his right. Warwick has gone through to the inside on the left. That's a great bit of overtaking. Great dueling, great battles. But Schumacher is your leader in the Ferrari. Can he make it 2 out of 2 in 1991? That would be an amazing opportunity for the very talented German youngster, still just 22 years of age. This could be a really exciting opportunity as Irvine comes into the pit, so he must have been one of the one-stoppers, which is why he ended up working his way back up the field quite dramatically, because he wasn't pitting. We need to now see what Alesi and Senna are going to do, because Alesi and Senna are obviously going to be in a very similar situation over the next few bits and pieces. Let's see how it all plays out as they come through onto the main start-finish straight. That is Nannini, now chasing after Jean Alesi. Well, Tyrrell led for a couple of laps. They certainly got a good car underneath them in 1991. Just need a little bit more fortune, I think. Solid effort, still going strong. But is there going to be a good run from this man? Diving up the inside, Gerhard Berger, getting himself back into contention. Thank you very much, P7. So Berger is just taking them on, one at a time. But it isn't going to be easy, that is for sure. There is Alessandro Nannini in the lead McLaren now, having caught and passed Ayrton Senna. And there is Frentzen in the Tyrrell. He's now best of the rest in P5. Oh, careful, Hightower. And very deep there on the run up to the duckbill. So he almost lost it at Pico de Pato, but he keeps it going. And Nannini is still charging down after Alesi, but let's not forget that Alesi is not really racing Nannini yet. They're racing probably towards the end of the race because they've got a differing fuel and tyre strategy. Senna is on old tyres. There's, Alesi and Senna. Oh, Senna's coming in. Senna's in the pits. So Senna making his pit stop. He's decided it's time to come in on lap 31. So Senna in pit lane. And that's going to drop him down to about 13th, I would have said, behind Warwick and Fernandez. So that leaves Nannini on his own to charge after Alesi. Frentzen up to 4th, Patrese up to 5th, and Berger up to 6th place in front of Hakkinen, Prost, and I think Gugelmin and Warwick will be there or thereabouts where Senna comes out. And Senna might just get out in 11th behind Warwick, actually. Unless he can jump Gugelmin and Warwick, that would be very helpful if he could. Here's Johnny Herbert, battling away with the Leighton-houses, just as they were in pre-qualifying. And the Dallara loses out on this occasion. Scuderia Italia Dallara still running fit to burst at the moment. Schumacher, Alesi and Nannini, the top 3 on the podium. Ferrari, Tyrrell and McLaren. It's really, really positive to see the Tyrrell team up at the sharp end of the field again. They had several years of difficulty, but ever since Sam Hall has stepped in alongside Ken Tyrrell, it seems that the squad has been rejuvenated in these last 2 seasons. They are back running towards the front again. It's great to see. Here's Gerhard Berger, 6th position now, so he's worked his way through past 3 cars. Senna has rejoined behind Prost. So that is about where we thought he'd be, actually, but he has just overtaken Gugelmin on fresh tyres, so that's good. And the Porsche Williams, the sole remaining Porsche Williams, is there in the points at the present moment, but in front of his home fans, Senna would dearly love to pull out a decent result this time. So expect it to happen anytime soon. Still a little bit of a way to go here for Senna. He's got a long race ahead of him. So let's see how it all continues to progress. Nannini is in 3rd place. Look at him eating up the road to Alesi. Suzuki passes the pits and is now behind Hill, Katayama and Herbert. So at this moment, the leading pre-qualifier is actually Damon Hill in the Dallara. And Dallara are actually having a fairly decent race of it at the moment. Damon Hill's actually going for Adrian Fernandez. Now, Damon Hill has had some time in the Williams car in the past. and they speak of him incredibly highly. Schumacher's your leader. Alesi's second. Nannini's closing up in third. I would expect a run down the hill and into second place for Nannini on this lap. He's not that far away from the Tyrrell at all. Look at him. He's really starting to reel him in, as Suzuki does appear to be having some difficulties with this car now. Little puff of brake dust here, there and everywhere. Wonder if they're having some brake trouble. It's not exactly a shock to expect it, because they've obviously had a bit of time between the races, but they still obviously had to not only get into the Grand Prix, but they also had to do qualifying. And that's where things get a little bit tricky. There's Gugelmin. So Gugelmin in the Lola. Is he slowing? Is Gugelmin slowing to retire? I think he is. Oh no. Suspension failure. Well, I'm afraid it's a crash back to reality for the Lola team after the fun and games in Cleveland. I'm afraid both Lolas are out of the race here in Brazil. What a shame for team boss Tom Cairns, working in collaboration with Eric Broadley. But I'm afraid on this occasion there is to be no double joy for Lola as there was in America. So that is game over for the MasterCard Lola Grand Prix team. And Nannini has actually not been able to catch up to Jean Alesi. Seems like there's a slight issue with the McLaren. Can't keep up with Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell at the moment. Considering that Jean Alesi's on very old tyres indeed. Here's Berger, another overtake. Riccardo Patrese this time. Up into P5. Berger is not out of this race. And look how much time he's made up on the leader, Michael Schumacher. He's made up 8 seconds. So the McLaren is still the car to have. But Berger's just had half a minute to try and make up. But Berger is flying at the moment. He's desperately trying to get back through. As Suzuki has a look on the inside of Johnny Herbert. Herbert ducks for the pits. So Suzuki makes it easy. And Hill has managed to get past Adrian Fernandez as well. So he's one place away from the final point. All sorts of things going off here as we approach the half-distance mark, and Johnny Herbert pits from P15. What a run this is from the McLarens of Nannini and Berger. Nannini is only 2.5 behind Schumacher, although he's not been as strong as I would have expected him to be at this stage. Gerhard Berger is just destroying the gap. It's now down to 18.7, so Berger is charging back. But look at Nannini, he's not as close to Alesi as I would have expected him to be. So Alessandro Nannini is actually having a bit of a headache here so far. This isn't quite going according to plan for the Italian. He wanted to catch and pass Jean Alesi relatively quickly to set off after Schumacher, and he's not been able to keep up with him. I must tell you a lot about Jean Alesi actually. And he is a prime candidate for a big seat in 1992. Of course, the Tyrrell is a big seat. They want to hold on to him. But there are all sorts of rumours that he could go and find a berth at another team. The most likely candidates, from what we're told in the press, are Williams and Ferrari. There might even be a chance at McLaren for Jean Alesi. He is very highly rated by many people in this paddock. He decided he was going to stick it out with Tyrrell for 1991, and it looks as though it's been a sensible decision because he's in second place, sticking like glue to Michael Schumacher. He should be falling by the wayside here. Schumacher's on much fresher tyres, but the fact that Alesi is keeping up, yes, he's got a light fuel load, but he's got very old tyres, and Senna came in quite a few laps ago, and Alesi is just staying out. This is great work from Jean Alesi today. Putting in quite a giant killing effort here in second place from a car that clearly is quick but isn't as quick as it could be at the moment. And here's Berger going for Frentzen. So that's P4. Gerhard Berger is now in 4th place, and the gap comes down again to 18.1. So Gerhard Berger trying to get back into contention with this guy. Michael Schumacher is the race leader, but the Ferrari is not as quick as the McLaren. So it's all going to come down to the 3rd stint, I think. Ferrari is still there, but even he's not pulling away from Alesi. He's got to look after the car by the look of it. So into the pits comes Warwick, and the battle for the final point, and Damon Hill is in pit road as well. Well, it was nice being the leading pre-qualifier while it lasted for Damon Hill. That's now gone to Ukyo Katayama. But Jean Alesi in Tyrrell number 3 keeps plugging away, keeps pushing. Working hard here. Now he's coming into the pits, but what a stint from Jean Alesi. Second position, and totally deserved it too. That is one of the drives of the last 12 months from Jean Alesi, and a very heavy car all the way through, keeping tabs on the man who won in Cleveland. Good job from Jean Alesi. Nannini goes through in a second, Berger's going to go through in a third, and I mean, it's harsh to say normal service is resumed, but Jean Alesi doesn't always get his chance to run at the front. He's certainly come out of the blocks fighting fit in 1991. An absolute stellar performer. Sadly, the car didn't last long enough for us to really see where he could have been in Cleveland, because he retired on only the third lap. But certainly here in Brazil, this is the Jean Alesi and the Tyrrell team that we know. Jean Alesi needs to keep Prost behind him. Prost is going to go for it though. Prost is going to dive in, and Prost will get through. But again, Alesi just needs to play the long game here. Doesn't need to panic that Prost has got through. Prost has indeed moved up into P7. But he's got to make another pit stop. Alesi does not. Alesi can run to the end, as can Senna. Now, interestingly, Senna didn't gain as much time as he would have liked, but he has gained a bit on Alesi. As there is Moreno, still holding on to his current position, which is 15th. Gerhard Berger has dropped the gap to 16 seconds between himself and Schumacher as he comes across the line this time by 16.4. Berger is just chipping away at the Ferrari up front. The Ferrari clearly isn't the fastest car here in Brazil. Damon Hill gets his move for 15th. But Tracy comes into the pits in the Ligier. He's left that very late indeed. So Berger having a very solid run of it. Comes off the turn again. Climbing up the hill. And Gerhard Berger running in third position behind his teammate Alessandro Nannini, who is currently in the traffic. And that's a bit of a headache. He's got the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher not that far in front of him either. 2.4 seconds ahead. So he really wants to get through the traffic a bit quicker than Schumacher to have a chance of going for the lead. Meanwhile, Fernandez is dueling with Riccardo Patrese. And there's Fernandez. Fernandez gets the move. So the young Mexican talent is very much giving a lot of support to the Arrows team financially. What a great run it is so far from Fernandez. Ninth position in front of Riccardo Patrese. Across the line comes Berger. What's the gap now? It was at 14.4. Nannini gets held up by Moreno there. That was close. Round the outside of the hairpin. The gap is 14.7 between Schumacher and Berger in third. So the gap is still coming down, but that was a bit of a scruffy lap for Berger in the traffic. Mind you, Schumacher's also having a scruffy lap in the traffic now. And who's that in front of him causing a bit of a headache? It's Damon Hill. So Damon Hill just holds up Schumacher a tiny bit longer than he would have liked him to. So Schumacher, Nannini, Berger, Frentzen, Hakkinen, Alesi in P6, and then it's Prost, Senna, Fernandez and Patrese. And Cesaris going off. Oh, that's a bit of a mess there. He spins right in front of Derek Warwick, who picks up the pieces and takes the place. And look, that's the field. Schumacher and Nannini went through there. Cesaris is trying to get the car started again. Pulls the car off onto the grass. Now you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to run the wrong way to get yourself restarted, providing that you're on the grass. He floors the throttle. The car spins out. Cesaris has now got to wait for a gap in the traffic, but this is very much consolidating the woes for the Bologna team. They got through to the Grand Prix, so they can be happy about that, but their cars were on the back row of the starting grid for the Grand Prix. Cesaris and Moreno. Moreno still going strong in 15th, but that's De Cesaris down to the back of the field once more. And the gap comes down again to 12 seconds. Berger has got plenty of time to catch Schumacher and fight for the win again. Prost is in the pits. So Alain Prost coming in for his second stop on the look of it. That means the two stoppers are going to be in anytime soon. Prost will drop out of the points for the moment, but he's obviously got time to get back into them again. So we ride with Johnny Herbert briefly. There's Alessandro Nannini. There's Schumacher up the road. De Cesaris has gone up again. Goodness me, De Cesaris really struggling to keep that car on the road. All sorts of handling difficulties from a driver who's got plenty of experience in Formula One. He's had a very tough career as the Cesaris. Hasn't always gone according to plan. But that was a big wobble off the road. So a very solid problem as Nannini is trying to stay with Schumacher, and now he's going to go round the outside of Damon Hill. Oh! And Nannini flies off the road. That was close. That was very close. How Nannini saved that. But Damon Hill was not paying attention. Nannini was trying to come around the outside. And that has cost Nannini any chance to go for the lead on Schumacher for a while. Ay, 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 that was scary. But how did Alessandro Nannini save that from being a monumental accident? So Alessandro Nannini staying in second place in the McLaren. He was very lucky not to bin it. Berger in third. The gap has come down to 11 seconds now. So Berger really is chipping away at the Ferrari's advantage up front. Ferrari still don't really have the fastest car in Grand Prix racing. Certainly looks as though McLaren have that, but Nannini is clearly not at the same sort of pace overall as Michael Schumacher, although he was catching him quickly just a few moments ago until he almost tripped over Damon Hill. Now he's going to get through, and he shakes his fist at Damon Hill as he goes past. So Alessandro Nannini is not happy at all with the way that Damon Hill held him up. Schumacher leads. Nannini in second. Third is Berger, and the gap comes down to just under 11 seconds now. Berger is making mincemeat of the guys in front. This is a really tense Grand Prix. And there is Berger, lapping Johnny Herbert. So Gerhard Berger is absolutely determined to go for the win in the Brazilian Grand Prix. He knows he's got the fastest car. He had an electrical problem. He came in, they reset the car. And Berger is now just hustling, just trying to get himself back into contention to win this Grand Prix. But the McLarens are definitely the fastest car out there compared to the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher, who is holding the lead, but the McLarens have been consistently taking time off him. In fact, Nannini, that off, has really dented his confidence. He's still sustaining that 3.5 second deficit to Michael Schumacher, and Schumacher's just responded in kind. Now, did Schumacher have that kind of pace all along? He's just backing off a little bit. Is he trying to tease the McLaren team a little bit to thinking they had the better car? Or are there more problems at McLaren? Because it seems to have leveled off. Berger is still at about 10.9, 11 seconds. And Nannini is about 3.5. And now Schumacher is working his way through the traffic again. Passes Moreno, who is in 15th place, I do believe. In fact, that might actually be the Cesaris being that for the second time. There is Nannini. 3.3 seconds is the deficit. And Berger's just taken 0.3 of a second out of the leader. So the gap comes down to 10.6 again. So the McLarens are still pushing the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher up front. We're on lap 43 out of 71. And there goes the McLaren. I'm fairly sure that one was Berger. Getting his way past Eddie Irvine to lap him. As into the pits comes Ukyo Katayama in the Leighton house. Katayama comes into the pit lane. Great racing here in Brazil. I would say this is actually a better race in terms of pure racing quality than it even was in America. And we've got a race that could potentially go to the wire. The McLarens are throwing everything they can at the Ferrari up front, although Schumacher is now responding. 11.1 seconds is the gap between him and Berger now. And there is Berger. He's clearly been held up by the Coloni of Roberto Moreno on the last lap. But he has now passed him. Going through the traffic. That's the real skill. And here is Michael Schumacher. We're on board with the Ferrari. Still trying to get well clear of the McLarens behind him. Not an easy prospect at all. So this car is an upgrade of the end of season adjustments from 1990, which they're obviously perfectly entitled to do. They found a good direction at the end of the year. They haven't made a radical design change for 1991. Schumacher goes around the outside of the Lotus to put a lap on him. And there are the list of retirements so far. We've lost Gugelmin, Blundell, Modena, Alboreto, Piquet, Mansell, Brundle. And in the very first couple of laps of the race, We also lost Thierry Boutsen in the Porsche Williams. So the gap comes down to 9.9. Berger now gets the gap down to less than 10 seconds. Still plenty of time to catch the Ferrari up front. And Nannini has taken about half a second out of Schumacher as well. Oh, this is getting tight. And the McLaren pair of Alessandro Nannini and Gerhard Berger are throwing everything at it. Berger comes into the pits. So Berger makes the pit stop first. Now this could be tactical. They're trying to force Schumacher into the pits as soon as possible, but Berger is the one that blinks first for the pit stop. This could be tactical from McLaren to try and break Ferrari's rhythm. But Berger will drop down to about 9th or 10th because of the nature of how close it is in Grand Prix racing at the moment. There's Alesi making his bid on the inside of Häkkinen, and Alesi goes through. Great overtake from the Tyrrell, so now he's going to chase after his teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who is about 8 seconds ahead of him. So Nannini, the gap is still steady at about 3 seconds between him and Schumacher. What will Schumacher do on this lap? He really needs to respond to Berger, either by upping the game, dialing up the speed, or making this his pit stop lap. Doesn't want to lose too much to Gerhard Berger after the pit stop. Schumacher is there out on track still. He is retaining his position. So Nannini laps the Cesaris. Where's Berger got out? He's actually got out a couple of seconds behind Ayrton Senna in the Porsche Williams. Now that's key because Senna doesn't have to pit again. So I think actually McLaren, this has backfired. They wanted to beat Senna out of the pits, not get out behind him. So this is going to be an interesting challenge for Gerhard Berger now as Warwick gets out wide and Nannini very nearly trips over him. This is the problem. Nannini could be faster than Schumacher, but he didn't have to keep dodging other cars. Frentzen is in 3rd, Alesi's in 4th, then Häkkinen, Senna, Berger, Patrese and Fernandez ahead of Alain Prost in 10th. And Michael Schumacher just getting himself out of trouble for the moment. But because Berger's being held up slightly by Senna, he's got a little bit of time on hand. But he can't afford to lose too much time. Got to be ever so smooth about his strategy now. He has a chance to win his 2nd race in a row, his 2nd race of 1991. The Ferrari's just got to keep rhythm. There goes Katayama trying to have a look on the inside of the... Is that the Coloni? He's actually trying to lap the Coloni. So that just shows you how difficult things have been for the Coloni team today. They were battling with them in pre-qualifying. Cesaris needs to get out of the way. He does, sort of, for the Leighton house of Ukyo Katayama, who is now in 13th, and he can see Derek Warwick in the Lotus up the road in front of him. So is there going to be a push for position there from Katayama? Here comes Berger, and he's going to make the move on Senna. Good overtake. Of course, that could be the push for the win later on. Now that Berger has got past Senna's Williams. Berger's P6, Senna is P7. The gap is 37 seconds. Schumacher can certainly pit in and get out again before Berger gets by. But the later he leaves it, the fresher his tyres are going to be based on Berger. Here we go, Schumacher's coming in. Schumacher comes into the pits from the race lead. And this is the pit stop that could decide the Brazilian Grand Prix. Nannini in 2nd, Frentzen in 3rd. They're both going to overtake Schumacher's Ferrari at this point. Into the pits actually comes Nannini, and so does Frentzen. They are all in together. Now I do believe that's going to put Alesi back into the lead of the Grand Prix temporarily. And Alesi, of course, has stopped. And he's made his 1 pit stop. Whoops, Katayama nearly tripping over Warwick as he tries to make the overtake. Frentzen is in the pits, Häkkinen is in the pits. And look at that, Schumacher's got out just in front of Alesi. There was nothing in it. Nannini comes out of pit road. But it's going to be close as Alesi is now going to try and take the lead of the Grand Prix. Jean Alesi gets through, makes the move on Schumacher and leads the Brazilian Grand Prix. Good move from Jean Alesi. Wow, Tyrrell hits the front. I don't think Schumacher was prepared for that. So Jean Alesi in the Red Bull Tyrrell Honda now leads the Brazilian Grand Prix on merit. What a great run this is from Alesi today. So Jean Alesi is genuinely looking at a potential victory for the Tyrrell team. But he's obviously not going to have as fresh a set of tyres as Schumacher's Ferrari is going to have. They need to be realistic. And Schumacher getting back again. This is definitely going to help Berger, who is now, of course, in third position. There is Berger, only a few seconds back. And Berger has got out ahead of Nannini. So that's what pitting early has done for Gerhard Berger. Fernandez going for the final point on Derek Warwick, and he's through. So Fernandez puts the arrows back into P10. But we want to see the leading battle between Alesi and Schumacher. Here's Schumacher. He's got a run on Alesi. He's got a really good run on Alesi. Down the straight, in the slipstream. And is Schumacher going to go for the move? He certainly pulls out. He's going to come back from a long way back. He's going to dive, and Schumacher retakes the lead. Brilliant racing in Brazil. So Alesi took the lead away from Schumacher, but Schumacher only needs to dial in the tyres for one more lap. And he gets straight back in front. Well, what a battle this is turning out to be. And Berger has leapfrogged past Nannini, his teammate, in the pit stops. Not only that, but the gap has come down. Berger is now just 7 seconds back from Schumacher, so he's gained time on the German. This is not done yet, folks. There are still 25 laps to go in this Grand Prix. Still a lot can happen. There's the retirements, 18 cars still running of the 26 that started, and there goes the Tyrrell around the outside of us. That's Fredson, I do believe, to put a lap on us. So Fredson's still got a fair way to go in this Grand Prix as well. Up the inside, as Schumacher goes through turn 1. He's got one of the Colonies, I think, in front of him, but Alesi is settling into a rhythm now in second place. The win isn't quite going to be on for Tyrrell by the look of it, unless something were to happen to Schumacher in the Ferrari up front. But certainly, the one pit stop strategy for Alesi, he's made good use of it. He's definitely pushing as hard as he knows how, as Schumacher nearly trips over a Dallara. That's Johnny Herbert he almost trips over. So Alessandro Nannini in the McLaren is just watching his teammate. Oh, Nannini's got back past Berger. Nannini has overtaken Berger somewhere. Don't tell me Berger's got more problems. But Nannini has got through, that's for sure, as Alesi now tries to come around the outside of Johnny Herbert in the Dallara. Oh, and Herbert spins! Herbert spins. Now, how did that happen? As Herbert was being lapped by Alesi. So Alesi and the Tyrrell came up for the final couple of corners of the sector. And look, Alesi goes around the outside. Oh, and Herbert locks up. He did that on his own. So I'm afraid Herbert is very much the architect of his own demise there. You can't pin the blame for that one on Alesi. He had plenty of room. Herbert just locked up and speared into the side of Jean Alesi. So I doubt there's going to be a penalty handed out to either driver, because you couldn't really say Alesi was at fault for that one, but I think Johnny Herbert has already cost himself. So, well, big disappointment for Johnny Herbert, but I'm afraid he only has himself to blame for that one. You can't really point the finger at Jean Alesi on this occasion. Alesi was being the racing driver and lapping him cleanly round the outside. Unfortunately, I think he's got away with that one too. So Jean Alesi still in sight of Michael Schumacher up front, but Nannini has got that gap down to 5.2 seconds. The McLaren is on the warpath. This is going to be good. This is going to be really good. Schumacher, Alesi, Nannini, Berger and Senna. Senna's only 12 seconds back. Let's give a bit of kudos to Senna on his A-League one-stop strategy. He's only 12 points back. 12 seconds back, I should say. So around the outside of Irvine goes Fredson's Tyrrell. Oh no, sorry, that's Alesi, isn't it? That's Alesi's Tyrrell. That is still in second place, because you've got a pair of McLarens behind him, and there's Nannini. Nannini has been the one who's allowed to go after the Tyrrell. Because Berger has not only been overtaken, but he's actually slipped back by 3 seconds. Has Berger got a problem developing again? As all of a sudden, the McLaren charge for Berger has faded, but Nannini's picked up the mantle. Alessandro Nannini has decided to go for it. He's already come very close to catching and passing Schumacher. Alesi. Down the back straight. Second place for the Tyrrell. Third is Nannini. Fourth is Berger. And De Cesaris is having a bit of a Lord moment in the Coloni. Yet again. It's 3 moments now for De Cesaris. If he gets all 5, he wins the snowball. Oh dear. Andrea De Cesaris having a bit of a miserable day at the office, unfortunately. So an interesting battle so far. As Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari leads the way. Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell is in second place, and the McLarens of Nannini and Berger continue on their way. If you've just joined us, we've got 20 laps to go, and it is a thrilling Grand Prix here. Schumacher leads Alesi. The two McLarens are still quicker than the Ferrari up front, and they are trying to get back in contention. Senna is in 5th place, just trying to stay in contention in the Porsche Williams. Frentzen in the Tyrrell, Patrese in the Ligier, Hakkinen and Prost in the Brabhams, and Fernandez in the Arrows is the way things currently look. There have been plenty of retirements as we watch the lap times come through. Let's have a look and see how the McLarens are getting on. Well, the Ferrari's picked up the pace again. Schumacher's got back on terms with the Ferrari. It's been a race of attrition, that's for sure. We've lost both of the Lolas, we've lost both of the Benettons rather sadly. We had all sorts of issues in America and now issues here too in Brazil as well. Thierry Boutsen in the Porsche Williams has also retired from the race. So problems there. And we've lost Nelson Piquet in the Arrows, who looked pretty happy to be getting into his helicopter and getting out of here, basically. Look how quick Prost is going. Prost is actually going quicker than the likes of Senna and Patrese up the road in front of him. So Prost in the Brabham still has something to go. So what's happened to Ayrton Senna, you may ask? Well, he's still there in 5th position, but he's suddenly falling by the wayside a little bit. He seems to have had a couple of problems on the last couple of laps. Maybe he's had to deal with traffic or whatever. And he's suddenly dropped off the pace a little bit. He's lost about 6 seconds or so to the leader in the last 3 or 4 laps. So Nannini is still piling on the pressure. That is Jean Alesi in front of him, and he knows it. And there's Berger in the background. So there we go. Working their way through. Schumacher out in front. Alesi in second. Here comes Frentzen making his bid on Senna. And Heinzauer Frentzen gets through without any hesitation at all. Senna has to let him go. So the Porsche Williams of Ayrton Senna works its way through. Porsche have not started the season the way they would have liked. Neither the Williams or the Benetton cars have ended up having a very solid start to 1991. But there is an upgrade period to come before Imola, and apparently there's going to be big upgrades at Williams and Benetton. So we could see things change dramatically when we get to Imola for the 3rd round of the championship, the San Marino Grand Prix. Now there is Alesi. Look, Nannini's all over him. So Alesi's slowly fallen away from Schumacher. Nannini's got to time this right though to get past Alesi. As he gets balked badly enough, and the gap's going to open up again to Schumacher, and he really wants to catch him. This is lap 54 coming to an end. Schumacher's going to go through the line now. And Alesi has got Nannini right behind him. Nannini just blips the throttle. A little bit of a feather. Here comes the move from Nannini. Dives through on the inside. No problem. 2nd place for the McLaren. So Alessandro Nannini in the McLaren Honda gets through past Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell Honda. And Gerhard Berger is in the background in 4th place as well. Now there's a big mystery surrounding this battle for 2nd place, because Berger was the one giving chase. He was the one who got ahead of Alessandro Nannini initially. Then Nannini passed him and disappeared, and Berger's pace has been conspicuous by its absence. He's closing up on Alesi, but he's not really gaining any more on Schumacher again. You kind of wonder whether Schumacher was just pacing himself up front. Michael Schumacher and the Ferrari maybe not pushing any harder than he had to, and then once the McLaren started to gain a little bit of traction, he's just put in a couple of faster laps, try and move the car further forward. Very interesting scenario, very tough situation for the contenders. So battle continuing to rage. Alesi in 3rd position, ahead of Berger and ahead of Frentzen. Then Senna. Hakkinen is 7th, Patrese is 8th, then Prost and Fernandez from Katayama and Suzuki in the Leighton House cars. Warwick has got the Lotus in 13th. They're having a miserable day. There's Damon Hill following in the wheel tracks of Schumacher's Ferrari. Now that's an interesting tactic, because that's going to put him closer towards Derek Warwick's Lotus. And then 15th place is Eddie Irvine in the Ligier. There is Schumacher climbing up the hill to try and put another lap on Roberto Moreno, the home driver. No, that's De Cesaris. So that's Andrea De Cesaris in the Coloni. So De Cesaris is going to get out of the way, is he, of Schumacher's Ferrari? Well, just about. It was a bit tight there. As they go through that corner, you can see there's Nannini, and there off to the sideline is one of the two Benettons. That's Martin Brundle's car that got parked up, and unfortunately, about 13 or so laps ago, Marc Blundell ended up losing the gearbox. And so both Benettons, I'm afraid, retiring from the Brazilian Grand Prix of 1991. Martin Brundle and Marc Blundell. And they'll be back at Imola. It's a circuit that both drivers really love. It's going to be a big upgrade for the Benetton team come Imola as well. A lot of the teams are kind of hanging fire until we get to Europe, just to get the cars out there, get the most out of these first two races, and then really start to make a push come the European season. It would not at all surprise me if McLaren, Benetton, Williams, and quite a few other teams suddenly make a quantum leap forward when we get to Imola. There's Frentzen making his bid to lap Irvine's Ligier, which he now does. Through they come. Nannini, 5.7 seconds behind Schumacher, but now that he's got past Alesi, he's not exactly dropping the hammer. Schumacher in the Ferrari is still keeping pace, and we've only got 15 laps to go. So Nannini is running out of time here. He needs to get back on the pace again. I just wonder if he's worn the tyres out, trying to get himself a little further up the ranks, because he came into the pits on exactly the same lap as Schumacher, don't forget. He was on the same lap as his colleagues around him. Frentzen came in on that lap as well, and he's now closing up on Alesi, interestingly enough. So the Tyrrells are working very carefully as they run through. Onto the back straight comes Schumacher. Lap 58 out of 71. 14 to go. Getting to the closing stages of this Brazilian Grand Prix, and now Mika Häkkinen's going to try and make his bid to move up. Oh, he easily sweeps past the Coloni. No issues at all there as Mika Häkkinen in the Brabham. The world champion from 1990, a very shock world champion it was, as a rookie driver in the Brabham. And Brabham, of course, hadn't won a title since 1983. So that's certainly keeping Brabham in the game for at least a little while longer. They were having some financial problems. So winning the world title definitely gives the Brabham team, with their team principal, Ewan Gale, in the hunt for quite a considerable amount of time. De Cesaris still hanging on in front of the McLaren of Nannini. Nannini's going the long way round, and there's Berger right behind him. So Berger's worked his way through the third place, as we know. Alesi doing the best he could to keep the McLarens at bay, but they are just so harsh in terms of their straight line speed. But the problem is that they've burnt out the tyres now. It doesn't look as though they've got anything to go after Schumacher with again in the Ferrari. Jean Alesi going through turn one. Oh, and he's lost it! He's lost it! Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell now. It doesn't look like there's a problem with the car. He's just overcooked it right in front of his teammate Frentzen. Well, I commended Jean Alesi for doing a great job, and unfortunately he's just thrown it away a little into turn one. So any chance of a podium for Jean Alesi is definitely now looking a little bit tenuous, as his own teammate Frentzen is going to try and close up. Well, that's Nannini lapping the Coloni. Alessandro Nannini in second place, but look, the gap between him and Schumacher is staying steady. McLarens have definitely proved to be the fastest car here over one lap. They actually locked out the front row with Berger on pole and Nannini in second. But in the race, they just haven't had it all their own way. Nannini had problems earlier on negotiating the traffic. And unfortunately, Gerhard Berger had an electrical problem while he was leading. Oh, Senna in the Porsche Williams, nearly hustled there by Eddie Irvine. And he was quite annoyed about that one, to be fair. He's looking at Eddie Irvine with daggers. There is Prix in the other Ligier with the Renault engines. As they continue to make their progress around the course. Prix has actually been very quietly getting on with this and looks like he's going to score 3 points for the Ligier team, which is not bad at all. As you've got Ligier hoping to score some points as many times as they possibly can. And there's Frenson making the bid on his teammate, and he doesn't make that one too difficult at all. So he gets through past John Alesi. So Frenson passes his teammate. And that's Frenson up into 4th position. Alesi down to P5. That brilliant run from Sean Alesi. Unfortunately, that spin really has cost him. Because now the tyres are very much past their best. So Schumacher leads. Nannini is 2nd. Berger is 3rd. Then Frenson, Alesi, Senna and Hakkinen. Patrese, Prost and Fernandez in the top 10. It looks like Arrows are finally going to get their first point of 1991. Let's see, down to the first corner braking zone. Schumacher leads. And the gap is 8.4. He's actually pulling away from the McLarens now. I wonder if Schumacher was toying with them, just looking after the car a little bit up front, because obviously one of the biggest problems that Ferrari had in 1990 was reliability. And it seems as though Nigel Mansell is bearing the brunt of all of the reliability issues at Ferrari. So, unfortunately, he's not really getting what he needs out of the situation at the moment. But Schumacher leads. Nannini is 2nd. Berger is 3rd. From Frenson, Alesi, Senna, Hakkinen, Patrese, Prost and Fernandez. Those are the point scorers. Behind them, we've got Suzuki and Katayama, the Leighton House pair. And then Warwick is in the Lotus in 13th. Damon Hill in the Dallara is 14th. And then it's Irvine in the Ligier in P15. And we are about to go into the final 10 laps of this Grand Prix. There are the 2 Leighton House cars. Cars that are built by March Engineering with Honda power. All sorts of rumour mills flying around about this team. There could be a Honda buyout. There could be a March sellout. All sorts of things that could end up happening with that squad, but obviously team principal Andrew Sanson is hoping to keep his job no matter what happens to that team. He'll still be trying to captain the ship, and he's very passionate about the Japanese influence and talent mill that is being created in that team. There's even consideration that that team would actually move its headquarters to the Honda operation itself at Suzuka. Which would be a big change, obviously, because most of the Formula One teams are actually based in Europe. There's not many that aren't. And there is the the second position driver, I should say. That's Nannini in front of Gerhard Berger, and we have 10 laps to go in the Brazilian Grand Prix of 1991. Michael Schumacher, the 22-year-old youngster in the Ferrari. It's incredible. He is this good, this young. Goodness knows how many records he could break in Formula One history, the way things are currently going. 22 years of age and already a Grand Prix winner. The youngest Grand Prix winner of all time now, I think. Actually, I wonder if Mika Häkkinen might have actually beaten him to that record last year. Might have done, actually. Mika Häkkinen is actually down in 7th place in the Brabham, having been a rather fortuitous world champion, very similar in the vein of his countryman Keke Rosberg back in 1982. He kind of came through with all sorts of problems for other drivers at the end of the season to become champion. I think a lot of people had their money on Ayrton Senna last year, but he had all sorts of reliability issues in the McLaren. But this year, they've had a team management reshuffle. Dave Goddard has taken the reins alongside Ron Dennis. And you know what? McLaren looks strong, but they don't quite look as strong as Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari at the moment. But they're certainly going to be leading the Constructors' Championship if it stays like this, because McLaren were leading after America, 2nd and 3rd. A total of 22 points compared to Ferrari's 15. It looks like it could be a similar story again here, because they look like they're going to score another 22 points. 2nd and 3rd place behind the Ferrari. Everything else behind them, by the way, though, is all change. From the American Grand Prix at Cleveland, we had 2 Lolas in 4th and 5th. This time we have 2 Tyrrells in 4th and 5th. And there is Hightower Frenson in the Red Bull Tyrrell. The Cesaris in the Coloni just getting out of the way. First to Frenson, and then he'll have to do the same thing for Jean Alesi. It's a new energy drink company, Red Bull, which came into Formula One last year, despite this only being their 2nd or 3rd year in operation. Alesi makes his bid, gets through on the inside of the Cesaris, no problem. But they're hoping to use Formula One to be a huge commercial platform to make the brand skyrocket. It's already looking pretty exciting. That's Moreno. Well, that's the Coloni with a gearbox problem. So Roberto Moreno's rather sick and sorry Brazilian Grand Prix on home soil is going to come to an end. His teammate Andrea De Cesaris, who's spun off more times than I've had hot dinners this week, is unfortunately still motored around at the back of the grid, several laps behind. But Roberto Moreno in his Coloni is out of the race. He had a disappointment in the pre-qualifying, and now he's had a disappointment in the Grand Prix itself. With 8 laps to go, he retires. So Berger actually dropping back a little bit from Alessandro Nannini, and Schumacher very much managing to stay on the same pace, if not get slightly quicker than the McLarens. He laps one of the Leighton House cars, that's Suzuki, who's just lapped, who is currently in 11th position. Still a bit of time to go here before this race is over and done with. Berger hustling behind the Lotus. Gerhard Berger trying to get past the Lotus in front of him. That's Derek Warwick, the sole remaining Lotus. They are having a miserable season so far. The Lotus team really haven't looked on pace at any point, either in America or here in Brazil. The team boss Ryan Ferris is clearly going to want to make a bit of a revolutionary statement when they get to Imola. A lot of changes to come from that team, I would have hazarded a guess. Through the left-hander. Still a very intriguing run. Schumacher leads Nannini, Berger, Frentzen, Alesi and Senna. Then it's Hakkinen, Patrese, Prost and Fernandez. So that's going to be a double points finish for McLaren, a double points finish for Tyrrell. Oh, Suzuki's coming to the pits by the look of it. So indeed, Suzuki has dropped back to 14th. So problems then for the Leighton House. That's very disappointing for Aguri Suzuki. So he's had a mechanical problem with a couple of laps to go. I was going to say it's a double points finish on the cards for McLaren and for Tyrrell and for Brabham. And it looks as though we could see a Ferrari in the points, as well as a Williams, a Ligier and an Arrows, with the Leighton House just outside the points in 11th position and the Lotus of Derek Warwick next up. Suzuki has kept going, but he's clearly had some kind of issue out there on the circuit to drop him from 11th place to 14th after a pit stop. And he has rejoined in front of Eddie Irvine in his Ligier. So Gerhard Berger staying about 10 seconds back from Schumacher. This must be bitterly frustrating, knowing that in qualifying they had the fastest car, in the race they had the fastest car. But in the closing stages, they've just had too much traffic, and now they've just got to consolidate what looks like second and third. I wonder if that's a team request from team manager Dave Goddard, who's just felt, you know what, we've got a good, solid haul of points here. It's consistency that wins Constructors' Championships. Let's not push it. He did tell Sandro Nannini a little earlier on to chill out a little bit after his moment, trying to go around the outside of one of the Colonis, I do believe. No, it was the Dallara he was trying to go around the outside of, I think. And he just about managed to get out of trouble there. And I can tell you that the officials have looked into the incident between Johnny Herbert and Jean Alesi earlier on in the day, and they have elected to take no further action. There will be no penalty for Johnny Herbert, and there will be no penalty for Jean Alesi. And that's absolutely the correct decision, because Herbert already penalised himself by spinning off, and Jean Alesi was not damaged and not hindered in any way by the look of it. So there is no penalty for Johnny Herbert. Gerhard Berger still going strong, trying his best to stay with his teammate. You can see him in the distance. 10 seconds behind him is the first of the Tyrrells, Frentzen ahead of Alesi, and we've only got 5 laps to go here in Brazil. Well, a very interesting situation for all of the contenders here, but we are just ticking off these final few laps. But this is when, here at Brazil, you get a little bit of attrition creeps in the final few laps. It's never always easy for everybody to make it through to the end. So Nannini just working his way up the hill. That's Damon Hill getting out of the way of one of the Tyrrells. I think that's Frentzen going through in 4th position. There's Alesi in the other one. So Frentzen is through past Alesi. And Berger's in second. Berger's in second. Has something happened to Nannini? What's happened to Sandro Nannini? Berger's gone through into second place. There was a good 2 to 3 seconds between them before. And Berger's come through in second position. Where's Nannini? Well, Berger is in P2. What's happened? Nannini's coming in. He's got an electrical problem now. Big drama. Second place gone for Nannini. Oh my goodness. And this is going to put the Tyrrell on the podium. This is going to put Frentzen into third position. So they're going to have to reset the car and get him back out there, but he's going to drop so far back. Nannini down to 6th. He's going to go to 7th. Might even go down to 8th at this rate, but Nannini, 2nd position, which was pretty much guaranteed, is now gone. And there's a Lacey charging forward. He suddenly realises, hang on a minute, if I catch and pass my teammate, I can get 3rd. But that's now both McLarens have had an electrical problem at some point during this race as Senna squeezes past the Dallara. And he's now in 5th. Big problems at McLaren then. They were perfect in Cleveland, but the peaks and troughs here in Brazil, that car is still not quite right. I mean, let's be fair, the Ferrari's not quite right yet either. Mansell can't get it to finish a race, despite the fact that Schumacher is on course for win number 2 in a row. And that was not expected. It was expected the McLarens would take command and disappear. But Schumacher has been the man who's made the difference in this Grand Prix. But there is Heinz-Harald Frentzen, looking good for Tyrrell now to get a podium. They were struggling to get into the points in America. Now they're going to get a 3rd and a 4th if it stays like this. Senna is there in 5th position. Hakkinen is in P6. And Alessandro Nannini is in 7th place in front of Patrese, Prost and Fernandez. 3 laps to go. And the battle is raging. Is that Fernandez pulling off? Fernandez is pulling off. Puncture for the arrows. Puncture for the arrows for Fernandez. And that is going to promote Ukyo Katayama and the Leighton House team into the points. Oh my goodness. What were we saying? The drama just doesn't stop. So the Grand Prix World Championship has seen bitter drama for Nannini and now bitter drama for Fernandez and Arrows. Both the Arrows cars are now out of the race. And that's Katayama in the Leighton House, promoted up into P10. So with 3 laps to go, make that 2 laps to go as Schumacher goes by. They are on the run for the final point. Wow. It never ends. The tension and the drama. It's not over until the final lap and the checkered flag comes out. So Frentzen still going strong in 3rd place. This will be a big relief for the Tyrrell team. They were scratching their heads as to what on earth to do for the best in America. So now there is a good chance that the Tyrrell team are going to get a podium in the 2nd race of the year and get a big haul of points as well, because if they stay where they are, they're going to score 18 points in the Constructors' Championship. That's going to kickstart Tyrrell's season. But for Ferrari, it looks like they're going to get their 2nd win of the season. But I can tell you now that McLaren, if it stays like this, are still going to be leading the Constructors' Championship, because Berger's going to be on 12 points. That will put McLaren on 32. And if Nannini stays where he is on 7th place, that's another 4. So they're going to lead the Constructors' Championship by just 6 points, McLaren, if it stays like this. They would have been leading it by quite a considerable margin if Nannini had held 2nd in front of Berger. But they can still be fairly content. Into the last lap we go. And Michael Schumacher leads the Brazilian Grand Prix. The 22-year-old from Köppen in Germany has turned into a bit of a superstar. A bit like the way that Mika Hakkinen and Jean Alesi did last year, as did this man, Heinz-Harald Frentzen. They put in some great performances in 1990. Michael Schumacher was going to be the one to really make a bit of a star of himself, but in 1991 he's come into this season with a Ferrari that he can be competitive with, and he is completely transforming the fortunes of the Italian giants. They haven't won a world championship for 12 years. Jody Scheckter was the man to do it in 1979, over a decade ago, and Michael Schumacher might just be the man to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Alberto Ascari, of John Surtees, of Niki Lauda, and of Jody Scheckter. Could he be Ferrari's next world champion? I also left Phil Hill off that list. But Michael Schumacher is coming through now to take the checkered flag. I left Mike Hawthorne off it as well. How bad is that? But here comes Schumacher coming through to take the checkered flag. It's a victory for the 2nd race in a row for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. And this time, it's even more of a shock than it was in America. Berger comes through for second for McLaren. They lead the Constructors' Championship still, and behind them in 10th, Katayama gets the final point for Leighton House. And look at the Tyrrells, they come through almost in formation. Frentzen third, and Alesi in fourth, ahead of Senna, right behind them in 5th place for Williams. So first points on the board then for Tyrrell, for Williams, and for Brabham as well, actually, because Hakkinen was in 6th place, Prost in 9th. Ligier get points for 8th from Patrese behind Nannini, who sets the fastest lap on the last lap of the race, just to show everybody what he could do. Bitter disappointment for Alessandro Nannini, but a point for Ukyo Katayama and the Leighton House team. They become the first pre-qualifying team of 1991 to score a championship point. And that's big, as far as things are concerned, for the Leighton House team. That puts them in the Constructors' Championship, which is more than Arrows can say, and it's more than Benetton can say. So they have already done a very strong job there, and it's game over in Brazil, and it's a victory for Ferrari for the second race in a row, and their talented 22-year-old star, Michael Schumacher. Gerhard Berger second for McLaren, Frentzen and Alesi third and fourth for Tyrrell, Senna in the Williams, Hakkinen in the Brabham, then Nannini robbed of second place from Patrese, Prost, and Ukyo Katayama scores the final point for Leighton House. Warwick just misses out for Lotus ahead of Suzuki, Hill, Irvine and Herbert. De Cesaris does come home. Fernandez is classified despite the fact he didn't. And there are the retirements. Moreno, Gugelmin, Blundell in the Benetton, Modena in the Lola, Alboretto's Lotus, Piquet, Mansell, Brundle, and on lap 3 we lost the Williams of Thierry Boutsen to a gearbox failure. A very dramatic race. Who set the fastest lap? Well, we know. Alessandro Nannini. McLaren were quicker, but Ferrari were victorious. Ferrari really have started the season in brilliant form. 2 wins out of 2. Mind you, still a few little niggles in terms of reliability. McLaren are not exactly invulnerable either. So there's definitely going to be a very interesting battle as we head to Europe. Tyrrell looking strong in consistency. Williams finally getting some points on the board. And of course, next time, the managers will be upgrading the cars to try and get a little bit more horsepower and a little bit more reliability. Stick around for round 3 of the championship from Imola. The San Marino Grand Prix is set to be an exciting one. I'm Jake Sanson. Catch you next time.